the underworld, the heavenly world. The three worlds tried to maintain a balance, but over time, this world collapsed to the appearance of all kinds of dangers. Heavenly world. The mysterious Hong Tong dark force filled the clear sky like a plague with speed. The soldiers shout that the dark force has enveloped the city, but the general replies, "We will die but defend our palace." They opened the barrier, and the Sagittarians fired hundreds of arrows. Unfortunately, their attacks were completely useless. At that moment, something appeared from the ground. The soldiers had already rushed to flee, but the general stopped them with a death threat. And at that moment, a huge hand came out from under the earth. A voice was heard, and the hand ordered the soldiers to go to the dark side. They had no more hope and were resigned to the fact that they had lost. But suddenly, a clear beam appeared from the sky and destroyed the hand. Turns out it was a legendary spear. The owner of this spear was the legendary god Arlen and his pet wolf Xiao. He was absolutely shocked that the dark forces had infiltrated almost all of heaven's territory. Xiao exclaimed that something was approaching. It turned out to be a huge statue of Buddha. The soldiers said that even Master Buddha had appeared, and surely they now had a chance of being saved. But God Arlan Yi Xiao sensed some sort of trick. At the same instant, Master Buddha began to attack the heavenly realm. God Arlan immediately activated the defense. He opened his third eye at his forehead. This skill added even more power to him. Xiao warned him to go easy on him, but Arlan still made up his mind and pointed his spear directly at Master Buddha. When he stabbed that demon who pretended to be Buddha, his spear was held back by something inside. Xiao shouted for him to be extremely careful, because this spirit is a strange spirit that might be more dangerous than he thinks. And so it was that the Buddha statue began to devour everything in its path. At this moment, Arlan excitedly held the spear and realized that his strength was leaving him and he would soon be consumed. Xiao couldn't watch it so easily and warned the demon that he would tear him apart if he didn't let Arlan go. But Arlan told Xiao not to come any closer because it was too late to do anything. He understood the mission of these demons and also realized that the gods could not defeat them. He also told Xiao that he had a mission for him, to which Xiao replied, he didn't think Arlan was such a coward. If he can't kill him, Xiao will. But Arlan told him to listen to him carefully and told him, "Perhaps you can fight him because you don't have the power of God in you. For you are a demon whom I found on earth and took with me to heavenly territory." And at that moment, Arlan decided to break the seal that had been placed on Xiao. Xiao didn't understand what was going on. He asked, "Is this a huge demon power or what?" He was very glad that he was free from this seal, and at last his torment was over. From nowhere, a huge fist appeared above Xiao, which sealed him into the ground. This action opened a portal in the ground into which Xiao flew like a bullet. Lastly, Arlan said, "This may be the only solution, Xiao." Spending his last strength, Arlan believed that Xiao could change the future, and he should definitely fix everything by infiltrating the human world. We go to a kid who somehow managed to fall in the water. He thought there was no saving him. His life was over. He didn't have a strong desire to live since the dearest person was gone. That person was his mom, who he loved very much. She was killed in a car accident. She drove her car off a cliff, and Bei lost an arm and a leg in the accident. Mom couldn't be saved, and sadly, she died. But suddenly, someone's hands appeared in the water. He was yanked by his sweater and pulled out of the water. The girl said the pool was only 1.5 meters deep enough to pretend to be dead. With a goofy look on his face, the kid said he was just kidding, to which the girl got angry. The teacher asked the guy named BEI if he was okay, and he said he was okay. When the teacher and BAE met outside, the teacher wondered why this small was the one going to his gym class. The students couldn't understand why he was still going to school. The girl who pulled him out of the pool at that moment asked the two hooligans if they were the ones who pushed Bei into the pool. They naturally excused themselves and said they wouldn't have dared to do that. The girl's name was She Yu-er, and she was called Bei's personal bodyguard. Classmates also asked BAE if he was okay. After that, our protagonist turned around and thought about what could be worse than false sympathy. In those words, he implied all the greed and hypocrisy of his classmates. He knew they were only gloating and laughing behind his back. All his life from childhood he had been bullied and mocked, so he was already used to it. But Bei wasn't of the same temperament, and he wasn't going to give up that easily. That same day on the basketball court, Bei limped off somewhere and walked. But suddenly a ball rolled to his foot. Two guys asked him to give it to them. He bent down to pick up the ball. But when he picked it up, the ball immediately dropped again. It was all because of his prosthesis. Bei was very nervous as he didn't want to embarrass himself. Guys were yelling at him that he's the former captain of the high school basketball team. Can't he grab the ball? Suddenly, some guy walked up to him. His name was Lin Ko. This guy's claim was, "Why is it that Bae staggers and limps around school? He looks like a clown." These words angered Bae a little. Lifting the ball off the ground, Lin Ke said that the only thing he likes about Bei is his tenacity. And at that very second, he hit Bae's ball right in the chest and said, "Stop faking it." Lin Ko didn't understand what Bei was trying to accomplish, and when they parted ways, he said, "Run home, lie down in your crib, and accept your fate." At these words, Ba could only remain silent. But still, Bae's straightforwardness was more pleasing than the false sympathy of the classmates. After school, Shu Yu-er was waiting for him outside. Bei had forgotten her umbrella and she wanted to go home with him. She showed such attention to Bae because he protected her as a child. They walked quietly down the street, but Bae got caught in some guy's shoulder. With indignation, the man started yelling that his arm was broken. The man's friends picked up Bae and started threatening him, and the man himself pulled out a knife. To Bae's surprise, there was no fear on his face. This bunch turned out to be nothing more than common burglars. One of the men put a knife to Yu-er's neck and said that if such a pretty girl was around such a retard, he must have money. Bae agreed to give all the money just to let them go. One of the robbers said that they would only let them go if Bae had to take off his clothes and go naked. It would be punishment for his insolence. Bae realized that he had to protect Yu-er, and he would have to do it. He took off his clothes and threw them on the pavement. When the robbers saw his body, they immediately started joking that he looked like Iron Man. When they went through his clothes and found his wallet, there was only $100 in it. They noticed Bae's prosthetics. They thought they were pretty expensive. And in that same second, Bae's mechanical arm was ripped off at the roots. One of the robbers sensed some sort of trick from Yu-er, and for good reason, because in a moment she elbowed him right in the jaw. The robber flew off into the wall. Getting into a fighting stance, the girl threatened the mugger, telling Bei to give his stuff back. Of course, no one would listen to her, immediately stabbing Bae in the back with his prosthetic. Continuing to mock the guy, he was called pathetic. After a small scuffle, the robber who was hit, Yu-er walked up to her and held a knife to her. Bae couldn't look at it calmly and decided to act. He pushed one of the guys away and immediately lunged at the other, hitting him with the rest of his prosthetic right in the face. Feeling some discomfort, he turned his head and saw that there was a knife sticking out of his back. He started coughing up blood and losing consciousness. The last thing he saw before he died was his favorite girl, Yu-er. He was shown some memories from his life. He remembered his mother and how she was dying. His life was very harrowing with lots of bad stories. But suddenly a ray appeared in the sky, the same ray from the heavenly lands. Like blades, it cut through the night sky and stabbed into the ground. As you might have guessed by now, this beam hits Bae directly. His body began the process of reincarnation, and the robbers at this point couldn't understand what was going on. But Bae didn't care about anything anymore as he absorbed more and more energy. A new one began to form in the place of his hand. And now Bae came before us in his most gorgeous form. His body was filled with power, and he seemed to be Xiao's new master, and the robbers wondered what it was. Crouching down, Bae began to summon the Xiao demon force. He seems to have gotten pretty good at it. Something strange began to happen behind one of the robbers' backs, which caused him to be surprised. In a panic, he grabs his hand and realizes he can't feel it. From what I understand, Bae pulled all the life force out of the robber's hand. The second robber threw the knife out of his hand and said he had nothing to do with it. He was just passing by. When Bei turned around, the third robber said, "Who the hell are you? Where did you get the power of the great Tiangu?" Bei didn't care about anything anymore. He just wanted to take out his abusers. The robber said that he was also a demon, and the whole situation was just a misunderstanding. He realized that it was better to give up, since Bei's demonic energy was too great. The robber was already ready to die, but Bae just walked beside him. The robber wondered if he was saved, but it turned out to be exactly the opposite. He ended up in the mouth of a monster. At this time, Bae was approaching Yu-er. She was very frightened and tried to bring Bae to her senses. When he got really close, there was a wicked smile on his face. The girl kept saying his name, hoping that Bae would come to his senses. But he didn't pay attention to anything and opened his demonic mouth very wide. It seemed like he was about to eat Yu-er. He must have eaten it because there was a terrible scream outside. Bae has a dream. In the dream, he resents that instead of having a festive dinner, he came to the temple with his mother. His mother interrupted him and told him to shut up. They prayed to the Buddha. The only thing he asked of the guy was that his mom be healthy and safe at all times. But at the same moment, the dream switches back to when they were falling off the cliff. There was a massive explosion. While still in a dream, the boy didn't understand why he was always dreaming the same thing. Someone behind Bei's back uttered an atheistic statement. With consternation, Bei exclaimed, "Who is it? Who's here?" It turned out to be Xiao, telling Bei that his so-called god is no more. In a panic, Bei asked who was talking to him, but the demon said he didn't need to know that, since Bae would be his food. At this point, the dream interrupted. Bei woke up in a hospital bed in a cold sweat. He quickly realized he was in a hospital as the smell was all too familiar to him. He hoped he was just dreaming about the monster in his dream, but it turned out to be exactly the opposite. Xiao's wolf was standing right above Bei's hospital bed. Opening his mouth, Xiao asked, "What the hell did you do to me?" When our protagonist saw the monster in his hospital room, he hid under the covers out of fear. Xiao was angered by this behavior and repeated his question again. But Bei shouted hysterically that he hadn't done anything. Xiao was not satisfied with this answer since he had lost his physical body and his divine power had attached itself to this boy. He didn't believe Bei that he didn't do anything. Getting close to Bei, Xiao said, "If you don't tell me the truth, I swear I will cut your throat." All Bei could do was make excuses and say he didn't know anything. Still, Xiao left Bei behind since he realized that he was too worthless a person to do such things. Xiao resented Arlen sending him to the human world a bit. Then he looked out the window and said that he would not miss the opportunity to eat the human world, and he would think about heaven later. Turning his head, he turned to Bei, telling him that he would wipe out all creatures from the face of the earth and leave Bei himself for dessert. Then as he continued to threaten Bei, he flew out the window. But suddenly Xiao felt something strange. There was a collar around his neck. It turned out that there was a chain from Bei's room straight to Xiao's collar that kept Xiao from escaping. With tremendous force, he flew back through the window. "I don't know what's going on." While already in the room, Xiao glanced at Bei and suggested that they might be bound by a spirit seal. He couldn't even imagine how Bei was able to seal his divine power. Calling Bei a wretch, Xiao didn't give up hope of freeing himself from the chains. But suddenly Bei grabbed his head. He thought of his favorite girl, Yue Er. He began to have terrible memories of yesterday, the last time he'd seen her. And that's when he realized he'd eaten her. Xiao moved closer to Bei and asked if it was the one or the girl in question. Pulling out his tongue and licking his teeth, he said, "She tasted great." At such words, Bei was horrified. Xiao made the excuse that he was very hungry and couldn't do anything with himself. He added, "Was this girl really that dear to Bei?" After saying this, Bei jumped up and began to resent his worthless life. After that, he immediately turned to Xiao and asked who he was and how strong he was. Xiao couldn't believe that the guy didn't know him, and immediately decided to introduce himself to him. He told him that he was a great absorber, and he had the status of being the strongest demon of the three worlds. And Bei further clarified, "Are you a danger to humanity?" Laughing, Xiao replied that yes, he is a threat of universal proportions. Bei wanted to teach Xiao a lesson for bragging. He climbed out the window and wanted to jump. Xiao was very angry as he knew that if Bei died, he wouldn't live either. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Xiao was already much more friendly. But it was too late. Bei had jumped off the windowsill. Falling down, Bei showed his middle finger to Xiao. He hoped his torment would finally end. But suddenly some threads began to wrap around Bei's leg. Soon he was completely fixed by these threads. Landing calmly on the ground, he saw something very strange in front of him. In front of him stood a sexy nurse who begged Bei not to do it again. The threads that saved Bei were threaded into her arm. The nurse immediately went over to Bei and put her hand to his cheek, saying at the same time that if Bei died, it would be a great pity. Xiao sensed some sort of trickery and was confused by the odor that came from the girl. And in that same instant, the nurse's mouth transformed into something horrible. It looked like she was going to eat Bei. Bei immediately bounced to the side. Xiao shouted to the one using the scissors for defense. Bei misunderstood Xiao and simply clasped the nurse's head with his legs. So his technique didn't work, and the nurse sunk her teeth into Ego's stomach. Puzzled, Xiao turned to Bei and said that he meant for Bei to stab the nurse with real scissors, not make scissors out of feet. And indeed, the real scissors were just lying beside Bei, but he never reached for them. Instead, he kicked the nurse's leg with all his might, but it didn't affect her at all, and she called Bei an unobedient little brother. Lifting her head, she told Bei that she would make him feel good. She started choking him. Bei was holding her ass at this time. Zhao watched all of this and called Bei good for groping the nurse's ass. Turns out Bei wasn't groping the nurse at all, but restraining the prongs that had grown out of her ass. Bei couldn't take it anymore. He remembered that he wanted to die anyway, so why was he defending himself? He let go of his hands. Zhao wasn't happy about it, as he knew that if Bei died, so would he. Zhao demanded of the nurse to let the kid go. He called her petty, and how dare she touch his prey. Turning around, she recognized Zhao. Zhao was indignant since the monster girl knew him, but still dared to behave so disgustingly. She laughed in response and said that no one in the world considered Zhao a great demon anymore. These words infuriated Zhao, and he lunged at the girl. But to his great surprise, he just skipped right past. He didn't understand why his attacks were useless. I think it was about Bei. The monster girl laughed again and said that she wasn't so stupid as to come in unprepared. She said Zhao was too stupid if she hadn't realized yet that she was losing her demonic power to this kid. Zhao was worried since he might lose all his strength. The girl continued to sit on top of Bae and laugh. Zhao couldn't believe that his great name would be tarnished by this loser and horny demon. Bei woke up. He thought he was already in heaven as he saw a woman's breast in front of him, but his pleasant feelings quickly dissipated as he realized he was still alive. He asked to be eaten as soon as possible, and the nurse told him not to worry. She would take care of it. But suddenly someone threw an apple at her. It was Yue. She came to visit Bei, and there was such a thing going on. She was angry. Bei was full of happiness as he realized that the dog hadn't actually eaten her. Turns out stinky dog Zhao was just lying to Bei. Yue was very angry after seeing this and started throwing apples at Bei and the nurse. The nurse didn't want to leave any witnesses and thus immediately rushed towards Yue. The nurse came quite close, and Yue still didn't understand what was going on. Without thinking long, she kicked the nurse in the back of the head with her foot, which sent her flying off to the side. The nurse liked Yue's punch and praised her for such strength, but she still wasn't going to let her go. With the words that she would not get away with this kind of behavior again, the nurse transformed into her final form. She looked like a spider. The nurse immediately began to attack Yue. At this moment, Bei was sitting on the floor yelling at Yue to run away, but it was already too late. Yue pushed herself against the wall and threads began to wrap around her neck, thus strangling her. Picking up Yue, the nurse said she was about to kill her, but then Bei ran up and started stabbing the nurse's tentacle with a pair of scissors. She turned her head and looked at it, telling Bei to shut up. In the same instant, her tentacle pierced through Bei's ribcage. He watched it all, choking on his blood. Tears were rolling down Yue's face. The nurse told Bei that he was fine. She hadn't hit any important organs, and he wouldn't die that easily. All Bei felt was pain, powerlessness, anger, humiliation, regret, persistence. Zhao quickly ran up to Bei and asked if he finally had the will to survive. If he still wants to live, Zhao has one suggestion for Bei. After saying those words, Bei Ming found himself in a place that looked like hell to him. He stood there wondering why he was always getting screwed. He also didn't know if he was dead or alive. Zhao, who was also in this place, accused Bei Ming of not valuing his life at all, even an insect constantly trying to survive. He called Bei Ming pathetic. Bei Ming replied that Zhao could not understand his pain. Zhao replied that he didn't need to understand his pain. After which Zhao said that Bei Ming was not actually in hell, but in his mind. Moving closer, Zhao said one important fact. Their lives and deaths are interconnected, and Bei Ming can't let things go. Bei Ming replied that Zhao was very unlucky then. Zhao continued to speak. If they unite, the whole world will be under their control. But Bei Ming replied that he wasn't going to put the world in danger. Zhao was angry that the brat rejected his offer. To this, Bei replied that he shouldn't even try to intimidate him. They would never cooperate. Bei said with a smirk that Zhao still had to obey him. Ziation realized that there was no choice and one had to obey this brat to survive. They had a deal, but Bei didn't understand why the man had agreed so quickly. To which Zhao replied that there was no time to delay. We are back in the hospital. At this time, Bei was lying on the floor and radiating demonic power. The nurse couldn't understand what was going on. Bei's hand batted away the nurse's claw. With the words that no one dare touch Yue, he took the nurse by the head, and he started beating her with all his might. Bei had Yue in his arms, turning my head. He looked at his hand and wondered how such a simple blow could have so much power in it. He turned to Yue and asked her to leave so that he could deal with the offending party. She replied that he was injured. Pulling a huge piece of claw out of his body, Bei said it was just a scratch. This action angered Yahello since you can't pull out the claw. He could die from blood loss. She was very afraid of losing Ba. Ba stood with claw in hand, unsure of what to do. He thought about shoving it back to calm Yahello down, but Xiao forbade it. There was no need for that since Xiao's demonic powers had stopped the bleeding. Ba looked at the wound. It had indeed healed. Xiao smiled and told Bei that this was only a fraction of the power he was capable of, and to unleash the full power the protagonist must obey. Bei asked Xiao with a serious look what he had barked. Xiao just joked back. Xiao turned away and said, "You have to be patient until I recover and break the spirit seal. Then you will definitely be absorbed, you little brat." The spirit seal was right in front of them. Bei shattered it into small pieces with a single blow. At this time, the nurse regained consciousness. She realized that if she ate Bae now, she'd be the strongest demon ever. But Bei thought otherwise, and with a shout for her to eat her stinking paws, punched her in the stomach, after which he put her own paw in her mouth. He planted his feet into the floor as much as possible, and was able to hit her as hard as possible, breaking down a wall in the process. He looked at his new hand. I couldn't believe how much power she had. He was excited and mumbled to himself that now he would be able to teach that bastard a lesson for hurting Yahello. But Xiaonian shouted at him to stop, turning my head. In front of him, he saw a spider's web. Ba looked at it and saw the rocks flying into the web cut. He hadn't realized it was so sharp. Grabbing his head, he realized he had just almost walked into a trap. Spitting out her paw, the nurse was very sad that Bei had not fallen into her trap. She suggested he lie down and wait to die. To these words, Bei replied that he was no longer the boy he used to be. He was unstoppable. With a torn face, the nurse rebuked Bei not to impersonate the Almighty just because of Tiangu's strength. But at the same instant, Bei grabbed the web and tore it off. The nurse couldn't believe how he'd done it. The web was woven from the simplest celestial threads. There was a voice of some people on the floor who heard a noise on the 16th floor. They urgently called security. The nurse panicked, since in order for her to continue living as a human, then one must not let them see her true form. Bai stood in front of her and asked if she wanted to eat him. Why was she hesitating? Scared or something? Reincarnating back into a nurse, she told Bei not to get excited too soon, since he had attracted so many demons with his surge of demonic powers. Warning him of further danger, she scattered and jumped out the window. Bai was puzzled and asked Xiao if she was telling the truth. Xiao replied that she had lied because many demons had been living in the human world since ancient times. Xiao and Bei continued to talk about the consequences, and at this time, the guards to whom Yahello was trying to explain something had already come running in. At this moment, Xiao explained that although he had lost 90% of his strength, it would be more than enough to defeat the earth demons. Also, Xiao sensed some sort of catch in what was happening. He had a bad feeling. Bei called Xiao a stinking dog and told him why he lied about eating Yahello. He was interested in what really happened. Xiao asked for some respect in his direction. He didn't like being addressed like that. But still, Xiao told what happened back then. At that moment, Yahello was very frightened. She begged for Bei to wake up. He was ready to devour her. But Yahello didn't hesitate and hit Bei right on his coconuts. So much so that they cracked. In pain, he slumped to the ground and whimpered. Xiao asked if Bei was satisfied with what he heard, and he said he was. Night City. Bei stood on the roof of the building and pondered the fact that this dog's powers were not very reliable. He wanted to see how much better his body had gotten. He activated his super hearing powers. Now he could hear what was happening a few blocks away. It made him very happy. Meanwhile, Xiao was a little pissed off that they were wasting time. He turned to Bei and asked what he was still checking. Did he not trust him? Bei replied that every hero needs to test their superpowers. Throwing a glance in Bei's direction, he noticed something. Xiao ran up to him and asked where he was going, staring. Turns out Bei was watching some girl taking a shower in her bathroom. They really enjoyed the spectacle. Well, the girl seemed to sense their bad looks and turned around, thereby scaring Bei. When they ducked down, Xiao said why would they worry if they were very far away? She obviously couldn't see them. Bei replied that her sixth sense told her she was being stared at. After saying that, Bei suggested trying out other powers. He stood on the railing and was ready to jump. "With scream, idiot, what are you thinking?" Xiao tried to stop him. Naturally, his words did nothing, and Bei tore down. With that, he pulled Xiao with him as well. As Bei flew, he realized that his hearing was so acute that he could hear the conversations of passers-by. And in that very second, he was already hooked with his hand on the lantern pole. He deftly did a somersault and landed very abruptly on his feet right in front of some couple in love. Zhao in turn just flopped to the ground. It turned out that the woman who was walking her man was very scared and pressed her suitor. The man wasn't going to let it go and berated Bae for scaring his wife. But instead of apologizing, Bae turned around and said that the man could call him Lantern Man. The man recognized Bae as one of his students. He remembered that the boy was handicapped. He seemed very familiar to Bae too. He'd definitely seen her at school somewhere. And then it hit him, it's the school teacher. Bae was sweating. He didn't understand what Master was doing here. He wondered if Master had seen his ability. But then Bai Ming noticed a girl who didn't look like teacher's wife. Then who is this woman? When Bai raised his hand, he smelled a strange odor. The teacher and his date looked at him and couldn't understand what he was doing and why he was sniffing his armpit. Bai realized the scent was coming from a woman and then approached them. He greeted them. At this time, the teacher was a little scared as he didn't want anyone to know about his connection with this woman. As they approached, Bei turned to the master and said that his woman smelled like another man. She must be cheating on him. He didn't want a good man like Master to be deceived. Such words made both the woman and the teacher very angry. Bei must have made a mistake. He had no way of knowing what that smell was. It was the smell of something burning. In the meantime, the girl had already left Master. When teacher turned around to scold Bei, he was gone. At that time, the cab was hurtling into the crowd at breakneck speed. There were two guys in the car who were in a panic and their brakes jammed. Because of this, they failed to slow down in time and crashed into a concrete wall. From that impact, the car flew upward, ending up right above the crowd. At that moment, something very fast swept through the street. It was Bei who had stolen a dog helmet from somewhere. He ran as fast as he could. A second later, he was right in front of the car. He activated the super strength ability, after which he had no trouble catching the falling car with his bare hands. Soon the car was on the ground, the danger was over. But such a spectacle made people both on the street and in the car simply shocked. Pulling open the car door, Bei asked the passengers if they were okay. After Bei saved people on the street, he immediately ran away. But the whole thing was being watched by some strange man who was filming everything on his phone. His insidious smile was already alarming. The next day at school, Bei walked the school's courtyard. Behind his back, two guys were whispering that our protagonist used to be the general center of attention and popularity since he was the captain of the basketball team. Two other guys were speculating that Bei's absence and leaving school for an all-sports school had caused a big drop in the team's performance. They felt sorry for Bei. One of the guys asked that they talk a little quieter because Bei might hear them talking. Their gossip was watched by Zhao. Bei asked, "What was he looking at?" Zhao replied, "If you're ignoring their conversation, it seems like you intentionally broke your arms and legs, huh?" The enraged Bei turned to Zhao and offered to try how it was. In fear, Zhao refused and replied that he was just curious. Bei told him to shut up. Since Zhao could only see Bei, their conversation seemed very strange to the guys who were around at that moment. They thought Bei had gone crazy. Suddenly, Yue was behind their backs. She asked the question, "What are they talking about here?" The guys in turn were about to run away from that cruel woman. In addition, they said all Bei can do is hide behind a woman's skirt. Zhao got angry from hearing those words and suggested that Bei kill those assholes. Bei replied, "They may be right about something. Let them run." Zhao replied that his heart was too kind. Yue ran up and Bei gave Zhao a very rude expression. She was stunned because she couldn't see the dog, so she thought it was talking to her. He immediately apologized and said he wasn't the one who told her. Yue missed this mishap and asked, where did he get his super strength from? Does it hurt him and maybe he needs to go to the hospital? The protagonist replied that she shouldn't worry because he was fine. He didn't know how to explain to her where he got this power from, so he just smiled. A few days later, on the day of the exam, Bei and Zhao were walking along the road, arguing as usual. Zhao resented the fact that Bao Ming lacked respect for his elders. Zhao has lived for 100,000 years, after which Zhao pulled on the chain very hard. They walked over to the table where the high school students' grades were posted. The first place was once again taken by a tough guy named Mu, who was said to have a good figure and was handsome. He has all the potential to be number one. Zhao asked where Bei's name was. He said down on the right side. This made Zhao laugh a lot, and he rebuked that Bei was always last. Turning to Zhao, Bai rebuked that it was all because of him, since he was hospitalized on the day of the exam and his grades were all 0. Zhao asked if he hadn't been hospitalized, what place would he be in? He replied that he was on the first one. Zhao was shocked by this certainty. The crowd immediately began mocking him. The master appears from nowhere and tells B to follow him. Biming approached the teacher. The teacher asked Bimin to forget last night's incident, and in return he would help him pass his exams. Bowing his head before the master, Bi thanked him. Ba always knew that master wanted to kick him out of school more than anyone else. He didn't understand why he was pretending now. The protagonist straightened up and said he had to go to class. As he stared at Bei's back, the teacher pondered the fact that when all this was over, sooner or later he would find a way to kick him out of the school. Just then Zhao appeared with a question. Why is Bei so worried about being in this school? Isn't it better to use demon power and conquer the world? To these words, Bai Min replied that school is not just a place to learn. In addition, Bei gave a very inspiring motivational speech. Zhao liked his answer, and he said that this child was stronger than he thought. Same day in the teacher's office, sexy teacher questioned Bae, why didn't he come to class the other day? Is it because of the recent one? He flirtatiously replied that he did, and added that he was fine now. But Zhao suspected something wrong. When the teacher again expressed her support toward Bae, Zhao finally realized that Be only came to school to stare at the sexy teacher. Zhao concluded that Bei might be an estrus. If anything, it's an urge to mate. The dog smelled some strange odor from the teacher and came closer to see what was so attracted to Bei. Bei was angry at these actions and asked for some respect for him. The teacher immediately stood up and handed Bei some kind of sheet. It turned out to be a re-examination statement. The teacher believed in Bae and asked him not to embarrass her. When Bi walked out of the office, he berated Zhao. What he did was unacceptable. But Zhao interrupted him and said that if Bi was interested in this teacher, he should be careful. He smelled anger in her. Did Bei suggest that she might be a demon? But Zhao refuted that she is a simple person. But it's like she's surrounded by some kind of evil spirit. Bei Minu has a dream. He doesn't know where he is. Suddenly, some scary monster appears above him. Ba doesn't know what to do or where to go. And in that same second, what was happening around Bei changed. A car's headlights shined right at him. He didn't know what was going on. The car was coming closer and closer. Turns out he and his dead mother were in the car. Bi opened his eye wide. The next thing he saw was a very bright light. Finally, he woke up. The excitement made him short of breath and he gasped for air. Turns out he went to class and fell asleep right before the exam. I've been having the strangest dreams lately. He noticed that there were many crows outside that window. They cawed restlessly. He looked out the window and couldn't figure out what this feeling was. Was it exam anxiety or something? The teacher walks into the classroom. Bi Min is surprised to see him. The teacher angrily put his hand on the table and said, I supervise all 6 subjects you are retaking. I will personally supervise you, so don't cheat with her now. The teacher added that if he detected any cheating, the results would be canceled immediately. He also added that the teacher should not be blamed for not giving him another chance if he failed. Bei was like a child, shouting that he wouldn't let anyone down. Pounding the table, the teacher said that Bei could begin. The time on the clock has started. Bei started swearing as he mixed up the formulas, but he still kept taking the exam. The teacher sat down directly in front of Bae to cut through any shenanigans from him. There was hardly any time left. The birds outside the window started getting very aggressive. They were making a lot of noise and preventing Bei from concentrating. At one point, there was a great rumbling sound throughout the classroom. Turns out the crow had hit the window so hard it broke it. In horror, Bei Min then watched as the bird fell, leaving behind only a hole in the window. He turned to the master and asked him if he felt that something was wrong. In a serious tone, Master ordered Bei Min to stop his nonsense and stop playing a prank on him. Even if this building collapsed today, Bei would still be sitting across from teacher and writing the test. At the same instant, the building shook. Bei and teacher couldn't understand what was going on. Did the earthquake really start? A warning sounded throughout the school from loudspeakers that the gym building had collapsed for unknown reasons. The school was taking all possible rescue measures. Teachers and students were asked to remain calm and not to panic. After hearing this, the teacher repeated that something had happened in the gymnasium. Ba pointed his finger at the door and asked teacher if he was going to go see what happened. The teacher replied that there was no reason to panic, ordering Bei to finish the test. Soon he said he would go to the gym after the exam. Bai thought about the fact that teacher was really making a lot of effort to give him trouble. But suddenly a wave of coldness swept into the office. Bei was alarmed since it was summer outside. And then he remembers. He jumps up from his seat and says that Yue Air is in the gym right now. She must be in danger. The teacher asked Bae what he was going to do now. Does he want to leave? He looked at the blank answer slip and emphasized that Bae did not blame him, as he warned him if the form was handed in blank, Bae would definitely be expelled. Bae was not confused and pointed out to the teacher the $100 that were lying on the floor. He asked him if he had lost it. The teacher replied, "Let me see it," and added that Bae should not make fun of him. In this way, Ba was able to divert the master's attention and fired a piece of eraser like a bullet. But when the teacher realized he'd just been tricked, he threatened Bae with expulsion again. But it was too late. A piece of eraser was headed for the back of his head. At the same instant, a piece of eraser crashes at lightning speed right into the back of teacher's head. The blow was so strong that the master lost consciousness. Bae caught him in his arms and apologized. After sitting the teacher down on a chair, Bi ran out of the classroom. As for the exams, he let fate decide his future. When he ran out into the corridor, he saw a terrible sight. The whole corridor was covered in red streaks resembling blood. He watched as some strange shapes formed on the floor. More and more, these figures became more and more like a human body. In just a couple seconds, these monsters were already standing in front of Bae. An outraged Bei realized that these monsters were the cause of what happened in the gym. He ordered them to get out of his way quickly. He didn't have time to waste on monsters now. One of the monsters wondered what the hell he was talking about. Bei was called out by Xiao. Bei in turn called Xiao a stinking dog and expressed his displeasure towards him since he had waited for a very long time. Xiao replied that was busy looking for answers to the test. Bei said the test doesn't matter anymore. Monsters broke into the school. Turning toward the monsters, they were gone. Bae thought they must have run away. Xiao said that monsters aren't important anymore. Let him look out the window. Ba looked out the window and wondered where such a large demon had come from. But Xiao said that unfortunately it wasn't a demon. It turned out to be a deity. Bi asked Xiao if he was sure it was a deity since he could sense evil coming from it. Bi asked, how can a monster be a deity? Xiao replied that no, only demons enter this world and there are also deities. Xiao, make it clear that this deity is infected with an evil aura. It must be because this deity has black powers. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gotten infected so easily. He thought maybe it was the chaos energy. But no, he couldn't smell it. He remembered that this deity's aura smelled exactly like the beautiful teachers. And then Bae realized, the place where the deity stands is the same place where the gym is located. He took off his seat and ran to save Yue. Xiao shouted after him that they couldn't defeat the deity with their current abilities, and the deity itself began to howl heavily. Xiao assumed it was in pain. Suddenly, the deity began to open its jaws. Turns out it threw up and vomited right on the ground. The deity was in terrible pain. It wriggled as much as it could, and gradually, it began to disappear. Bai Xiao couldn't understand what was going on. Xiao remembered that he had experienced the same feeling in the school campus. This school seems to be the problem. The school was almost completely destroyed. Most of it was reduced to rubble. Soon some people arrived on the school grounds. They cordoned off the whole building. One of the students tried to call 119, but one of the men snatched the phone and ordered no one to make any phone calls. The school would soon sort it all out. The guys started getting indignant and asking for their phone back. Suddenly, Bai ran past them. He shouted out Yue-er's name. He was captured because he was not allowed to be here. He kept repeating that Yue-er was still inside. Bai leaned in and asked to be allowed to pass. A man watching all this noticed that Bai has a prosthetic. This kid is disabled. Ba manages to wriggle out of the guard's grasp, but a second later, he was grabbed again by one of the guards. Bei shouted that they were here even without basic life-saving equipment. They surely weren't going to sleep Yue-er. A crowd of school children began to resent the behavior of the men who had arrived. The most important one told them to shut up if they didn't want to die. In the meantime, Bae gathered his strength and clenched his teeth. The guard felt that the brat was suddenly stronger. That's when Xiao appeared and warned the protagonist of the consequences. If he showed his strength on display now, he wouldn't be able to stay in school. Bae replied that there was no point in staying in school if Yue-er wasn't there. After these words, there was a flash of light which raised a lot of dust. Ba took on his demon form. He snapped out of his seat, shouting, "Yue-er, you must wait for me," headed to attack the guards. They, in turn, couldn't understand whether it was the handicapped man who had made that thick smoke an earthquake. The second guard said they had to be very vigilant. One of the guards saw Bai's outline in the smoke. He wanted to grab it immediately, but it was a fake made by Bai. Bei himself at the same time knocked out the guard with a palm strike. In the other guard, he punched him in the stomach with all his might. He needed to hurry up and knock out all these people. He can't let them get in his way of saving Yahello. The sounds of thumps and groans could be heard. Bei was not on the edge of his seat. Standing in the smoke screen were the last two guards. They were resentful of the fact that their partners were a useless bunch of trash. They couldn't even handle a high school student. One of them tried to reach for a gun, but the other stopped him. He said that this is a school and they can't use weapons here or they will be reprimanded by the management. They came here in the first place just to warn people. The second guard pulled out a stun gun and said it was better to use it. But the first guard didn't hear him anymore. Since he was under Bei's control, the second guard saw this and tasered Bei in the neck. The gesture didn't do any damage at all. Bei asked the guard with a smirk on his face, "Is that the best you can do?" In panic, the guard screamed and didn't understand how this was even possible. He asked Bei who he was. Bei in turn replied that he was just handicapped. At that very second, the guard was unconscious. After that, Bei ran to the ruins. Xiao was already there. The guy asked how things were going. It turns out Xiao has already checked the rubble and found 15 students. They are breathing heavily, but their vital signs are normal. If they are not pulled out, they might get hurt. But that's not what he's worried about. The evil aura that continues to pour out from beneath this debris has not stopped. Bei replied that they would take care of that later. Right now, it was more important to save the people. He immediately rushed to rake the rubble with his bare hands, rocks flying left and right. Tired Bei knew the injured were somewhere close by. Grasping the concrete slab with his bare hands, he tried to lift it. Using almost all of his power, he succeeded. Xiao, who was watching this, thought that this brat is really putting up a good fight. This slab weighs at least 10 tons. Bei managed to raise the slab to his height. M managed to look under the rubble. There he saw Yahello, who was sitting helplessly on the gym floor. She couldn't believe her eyes. Could she really see Bei? A smiling Bei replied that she shouldn't be afraid. He was only here to save her. An ambulance finally arrived on the scene. The school principal was also on site. He put aside all his meeting and came to find out what happened. At that time, Bei was helping his classmates get out from under the rubble. Classmates who had been safe all this time were pointing fingers at him. They couldn't believe that Bei had saved so many people. The people around here were just talking about Bei. How is that even possible? Bei couldn't even walk normally. How could he save people? They couldn't believe it. Doctors finally carried the injured away on stretchers. The principal addressed Bei and thanked him on behalf of the teachers and students of the school. Embarrassed, Bei replied that he was misunderstood. He was only helping Yahello, the others he saved by accident. But the principal still said, such acts are commendable. The remaining students also decided to support Bei with applause. The director also explained that the incident happened because of the recent renovation. Probably the builders did something wrong. He also mentioned the people in uniform whom he had invited himself. The director apologizes for the conflict they created at the scene. The teacher then asked the children to go home. The school will deal with the incident properly. It turned out Xiao kept his eyes on those teachers. He wondered if this principal had the same evil spirit as that teacher. Xiao thought there were other secrets behind this school he couldn't see yet because of the evil spirit. Well, that's exactly what he's interested in, as it would help him unlock the rest of his abilities. At that time, Yahello was helping some girl walk. Bei asked why she didn't go to the hospital, and she said she just had a small bruise, nothing serious. This angered Bei because Yahello needs to get checked out right away. To be sure that Yahello is fine, he will go with her. The girl who was helping Yahello remarked that she was very lucky to have a boyfriend who really cared for her. Yahello blushed and thought that Bei cared for her so much. Maybe there really are some feelings. But no, he's just her friend. Then Xiao he came over to Bei saying that it was too early for them to leave and they shouldn't let their guard down. He reminded Bei that the deity had burped something. Bei thought for a moment and remembered. What the deity regurgitated, it was a monster. Xiao said that if they ignored this case, many people would die in this school. Bei shouted out in horror that he couldn't leave things as they were, but he would help Yahello first. Glancing at Bei's departing back, Xiao pondered that Bei was so young and already subservient. That same evening in the park, there was a couple in love sitting near the fountain. The guy really wanted to kiss the girl. She got up and said she was going to the bathroom first. The guy asked the girl to come back soon. He was very pleased that he could date such a beautiful girl named Lily. It had been an impressive amount of time. He was alarmed by the fact that Lily still hadn't returned. Around the corner of the building, he heard some sound. He thought his girlfriend had finally returned. With the intention of kissing the girl immediately, he peeked around the corner, telling her to hurry up. But at that moment, the girl who was possessed by the demon was looking at him. The girl replied that she could kiss him. The guy himself was immediately thrown into a sweat. In front of him, he saw a writhing monster with many mouths and a girl on top. She told the guy to come over and kiss her. He rushed to run away but was grabbed by the collar. The girl reminded him that the guy wanted a kiss. He was asking for help to get released. But suddenly, some other girl appeared. She uttered these words, "Let the ice lotus bloom, which blooms on the deadly ice field." After these words, the monster's hand that was restraining the guy was cut off by ice shards. The monster screamed, "Who dared to do that?" The girl savior was too late. She realized that that innocent girl had been consumed by a demon. She called this monster a poor creep. He even has to borrow someone's body to talk. And yet he's carefully trying to find out the girl's name. Walking towards the monster, she uttered, "This ice and snow will be the last you will see." The monster shouted that he recognized her. She is the queen of this school, and her name is Mushui. Mushui only remained silent at her words. Then she said if those were her last words, then goodbye. And the girl began to form a sphere of ice, which evolved into a sword form called the Winter Star. The monster didn't expect that the girl is a night hunter, and surely such a student would be someone from Chongmin's house. Mushui immediately rushed towards the monster and struck countless blows, thus chopping the monster into pieces. She landed epically on the floor, showing all her power. At the same time, Bei Yi Xiao ran towards the sounds of battle. They couldn't understand what happened as the demon's breath suddenly disappeared. Xiao assumed that someone had made the first move. Ba was shocked to find out if there were other people with unusual abilities in the school besides him. Xiao replied that if there were demons and deities, why was he surprised at the unusual abilities of humans? But it's not easy to know who is friend and who is foe. They were running, and Xiao knew there would be another obstacle ahead. Mushui was already waiting for them. Bei seemed to recognize the girl too. She stood in front of them, and beside her lay a dead monster covered in ice. A flustered Bae wanted to say her name, but when Mushui looked at him with her beautiful gaze, he questioned who she was. Xiao called out to Bei and asked, how did he forget everything so quickly? He didn't realize if Bae was really stupid or if he was just pretending and doing it on purpose. Mushui said Bei smells like a demon. She added that she had seen him saving other people. She even intended not to touch Bei and let him go. Bei and Xiao didn't understand what they were talking about. The girl continued talking and said that now Bei Ming was out of luck. He had found out her secret. She swung her sword in front of him and added that he had no other choice but to die. In a panic, Bei yelled that he didn't even know who she was. With a wave of her hand, the girl released a blob of ice and aimed it straight at Bei between his legs. Why the fuck do you want to kill my banana? He bounced out of the way. Calling Bei a cheeky kid, Mushui continued to attack Bei. Bei dodged the attack. Bei showed excellent agility and coaxed Mushui to stop and talk quietly. The girl was surprised that Bei could dodge her attacks. Fully studying Bei's movements, the girl saw his weak spot. With a shout, "It's over!" She pointed her sword at his weak spot. But no luck, Bei was able to block the punch with his arm. This shocked Mushui. He stopped the attack with his bare hands. That's not possible. The girl jumped away from Bei, and when she looked at him again, she was stunned. Bei stood looking at her student passport. Mushui was just like our protagonist. She went to high school. Damn it, thought the girl to herself. How did he manage to take her student passport? Tapping himself on his palm, Bei realized why Mushui was so angry. He turned to Xiao and explained that Mushui is known as the Ice Goddess and is an influential figure in our school. But I've only heard rumors about her, and I've really never seen her before. So she must be angry because I don't know her. After letting Bei's words pass her ears, the girl said that she had underestimated him. He wasn't such a weak demon already. She added, "You made me release my true powers to fight you." Xiao thought the girl's breathing seemed very familiar. It dawned on him she was Qingnu to him. The girl was getting stronger and stronger. Bei didn't understand, so he asked who Qingnu was. Xiao replied that Qingnu was the god responsible for cold and snow. The kid was shocked that a goddess was at his school. At this time, the girl pointed her finger at Bae, saying that now, I'll put an end to you. At the same second, the girl activated the superpower Ice Dance Blizzard superpower. A bunch of ice shards headed towards Bei and Xiao. Ba tried to dodge the blade-sharp chunks of ice. He managed to bounce away from the avalanche of ice. He tried to explain something to the girl, but it was all in vain. No matter how much he ran away, he was chased by many shards of ice. In a panic, he started to call for Xiao's help, as he had to think of something immediately. He didn't understand why Xiao was ignoring him. Xiao thought deeply. Evil deities were already more than enough, so even humans could have divine powers within them. This human world was too crazy for him. In this kind of situation where information doesn't connect, it's too disadvantageous for him. When Bei had already started to beg for clemency, Xiao heard him, disgusted that the kid had caved in to the girl's onslaught. He shouted, "Why does he keep dodging? What the hell is he afraid of? You just have to get up and attack." Bei was already running through the building. He replied that doesn't Xiao know manners? Men don't hit girls. But the girl continued to attack Bei Min. She wanted to see how long he could dodge. Being airborne with a serious tone, Bei Ming replied, the girl probably didn't understand him yet. He managed to fend off one attack and direct the chunks of ice back towards the girl. He was like lightning as he repelled the attacks one after another, gradually approaching Mushe. And there he was, standing right in front of her. He said, "Spare me, goddess. I'm a really good man. I'm also here to get rid of the demon." Also added that we need to be a little lenient with each other. With the words, "Don't talk nonsense," she put her sword right on the bridge of Bei's nose, thus frightening him. She jumped up and said everyone must die, and Bei got his arm around it and blocked the shot. Stupid girl doesn't understand anything at all. Damn it, behind them was the guy who wanted to kiss. Apparently, he was now under the deity's control. It said it couldn't let him get in the way. Mu Shui was shocked. She thought, what? She had killed it. How could it survive? The deity appeared before them in all its glory and uttered, "Lowly human beings are evenly trying to fight the deity." Zhao looked at him and couldn't understand why he had so much to do with deities today. Bei asked Zhao if he knew him. He said he did. It was whatever the hell his name was. Zhao didn't remember what his name was. He only assumed that this deity had transformed from a snake to a dragon. And if that's the case, where's the head? Snapping out of her seat, Mu Shui said that whether it was a deity or a demon, as long as it harmed the world, then it must die. With those words, she rushed to attack the deity. Well, when she threw a lot of punches, her sword broke easily. She wondered if the creature had such hard scales. When Mu Shui shifted her attention to the broken sword, the deity had already swung its tail at her. Thank God she managed to activate her shield in time to take the blow. But the blow was so powerful that the shield was blown to pieces. The girl was upset as this was probably the limit of her divine powers. How could she compare to a deity? She immediately lost consciousness and flew down. She was led to the silhouette of a girl. She called her sister. But Bei was not confused and immediately rushed to his aid. In a second, he had covered an impressive distance, leaving a beam of light behind him. When he did catch the girl, he told her not to be such an impulsive goddess. Bei heroically held Mu Shui in his arms and said, "Let the men deal with this thing." But the deity didn't care about their tenderness. It roared at them with all its might. When the girl was down on the ground, she said, "Okay, I'll leave it up to you." Bei, along with Xiao, stood right in front of the deity's mouth. Now it was their turn to engage in battle. He snapped out of his seat with shouts of "Go!" But suddenly something went wrong. He tripped over something and thus traveled the entire distance to the deity, scrunching his face on the pavement. The deity didn't think long and struck Bei with his paw. Mu Shui was very scared. She thought that Bei was finished. Xiao covered his eyes with his paw as he didn't want to see this shame. But no such luck, Bei activated his super strength and held back the deity's full onslaught. With threats that the jokes were over and you asked for it, he grabbed the deity by the tail and started running. He clawed so hard at the monster that he made it vomit, after which Bei started unwinding the monster by its tail with all his might, and soon, with tremendous force, he threw it straight up into the sky. Turning to Musha, he said that it was now her turn. Being in a cool pose, she activated her superpower by reciting a spell called Prison of Eternal Frost. The deity was covered in ice and began to crack. It was already clear that together they had defeated him. Zhao watched the girl and realized that this girl could use Qing Nu's advanced spells. I wonder how she is related to her. The frozen monster that was in the air soon began to fall, causing a great rumble. The monster was covered in a large ball of ice, but some of them still questioned whether it would completely seal the monster. Bei suggested just leaving it there. It would be like a school sculpture. Mu Shui replied that Bei didn't need to worry about it. The monster will be followed and dealt with, only a little later. Bi smiled and asked the girl if they could have a quiet chat now. She called Bei a little demon and said they had nothing to talk about. If he disappeared from her sight immediately, she'd pretend she hadn't seen him. Bi was upset. Why are all the goddesses so nasty? Xiao replied that it must be pleasing to them. But suddenly there was a massive explosion behind their backs. The monster was free. The girl didn't understand how this was possible. No one had ever broken her prison of eternal frost. Bai noticed the danger and shouted for Mu Shui to be careful. He still managed to push the girl aside, but he himself was penetrated by the monster's tongue. Bi crouched down in pain. The monster let something loose at him. He yanked with all his might, and it was a worm-like creature. Bei was outraged. Why is he the one who always gets hurt? Mu Shui ran up to him and asked if he was all right. He replied that yes, he was fine, but he thought this deity was strange. Out of nowhere, a man emerges from the monster's mouth. Continuing to approach Bei and the others, the newly formed creature began to speak. In the human world, there is an ancient saying called "a small body hides a great soul." A humanoid male creature appeared before them. The creature continued to philosophize. Bei jumped on him and said he also had one old saying. Hitting the deity with all his might, he said, "The villain died from talking too much." Unfortunately, Bei's fist was intercepted by a deity. The deity replied that the demonic power the guy was using was really strong, but it's over for Bi. The deity began to wrap dark powers around Bei's arm, thus breaking his bones. The guy's scream echoed throughout the area. On top of that, Bi was attacked by all the offshoots that the deity had. Our hero was in a lot of pain. He felt his strength leaving him. He realized that he didn't have the strength and energy to resist his opponent too strong. Now he realized what the deity was capable of. With a powerful blow, Bi was sealed into the wall. Somewhere behind him, Xiao asked him if he was alive, to which Bai replied that they would all have to die here today. How could such a mortal defeat such a powerful deity? Xiao was disappointed with Bei. He seemed like a weakling to the emu right away. Bai lay helplessly on the ground, the bones of his entire body broken. He couldn't move at all, but suddenly his body began to be covered in ice. He asked Mu Shui what she was doing, who in turn said that she was using ice to seal his body to reduce internal bleeding. This could temporarily save his life. Turning her head, she added that she shouldn't have interfered from the start. This wasn't his battle. Ba tried to stop her. Did she really want her own death? He asked the girl to run away, and he would somehow distract the deity. She replied that seeking her own death was the purpose of her birth. Leaving Bei behind, she went straight to the deity. Bi could only watch as Mu Shui was grabbed, and her bones were also cracking. At that time, the deity had already crucified the girl and wondered how she wanted to defeat him. Bi couldn't just look at it and called Xiao a stinky dog and asked him to think of something. He was always bragging about how amazing and strong he was. There was only one way to let Xiao's soul enter Bei's body. This would activate the strongest powers Xiao possessed. Bai couldn't fully trust Xiao, but there were no more options. Especially since Mu Shui was practically suffocating, there was a need for action. He trusted Xiao and allowed him to take his body and kill the deity. Xiao was unspeakably happy to hear this. He had been seeking this for so long. At the same second, lightning struck from the sky. Xiao took control of Bei's body and became drunk with power, lightning bolts emanating from him. The deity looked at this and was perplexed. This guy's demonic powers had suddenly increased? Meanwhile, Xiao was approaching closer and closer. He prostrated himself in front of the deity in all his glory, Xiao uttered. So this is what the return of the body feels like. It turned out Bei had been tricked by Xiao. All this time, Xiao had been controlling the amount of energy he gave Bei, thereby reducing his strength. Deity ditched the girl and turned to Xiao. He asked what he was allowing himself, no matter who he became. And with the words, "All men must die," he went on the attack. But Xiao raised his hand with an energy charge and told him to open his eyes wide and get a good look at who was standing in front of him. The deity was a bit shocked. Stuttering, he was still able to say that it was Boss Xiao in front of him. Yes, yes, replied Xiao. He added, "Long time no see, Xiaohua. Xiaohua used to be really nice." "How did it come to this?" the deity replied. "Boss, it's because I didn't heed your words and secretly went to the human world to play. But suddenly I was caught by those disgusting people. They not only cut off my head, but even imprisoned me." Xiao replied that if the deity was caught by humans, then it was indeed very useless. The deity wondered if Xiao wanted to join forces and take revenge on those cursed people. He replied, "What the hell else is revenge?" thus misleading the deity Xiaohua. He laughed and kept saying, For people such weak and insignificant insects, he actually uses the word revenge? Then he is truly pathetic. Lowering his head, the deity asked, "Does that mean you don't want to unite with me?" Biting his finger with his teeth, Zhao replied that to turn this world upside down, he alone was enough. This didn't make the deity angry. If he didn't want to join forces with him, then Zhao had better not get in the way of revenge. "Otherwise, don't blame me," was the deity's reply. Zhao stood there revealing his full demonic potential. He was amused by the fact that the deity wanted to fight him. Given the fact that they were old acquaintances, Zhao was hesitant to let him go. But now it didn't seem to be necessary anymore. Although he wouldn't return Bei's body, he still promised him to deal with his deity. Licking his lips, he added that he would let the deity be his food. A dog-like spirit immediately rushed towards the deity. The deity managed to hold back the blow. It was confident that it would defeat Zhao. After which he pointed his snakes at Zhao. This gesture only amused Zhao, but something didn't go according to plan. The deity looked at Zhao with fear. It turned out that Zhao had released the ghost messengers from his body. Zhao replied that there was nothing special about it. He had only devoured a few ghost messengers. It was no problem for him, as he had once passed through the 18 floors of hell to devour Yan Luo, ascended to the heavens to devour the gods and Buddha. It was all so delightful. P.S. Yan Luo, the king and protector of the underworld. The deity shouted that they would see who was stronger. It then began to gather a blob of energy in the center of its belly. Zhao only laughed at such a statement and immediately formed a sphere in his mouth. Then he spit it out like it was a gunshot. The yellow orb hit right where the deity energy blob was gathering. It turned out to be part of a solar flame. Stifling the fire in his mouth with Mu Shui's ice sword, Zhao replied that the yes part of the solar flame was much more flammable once he bit it off. At this time, Mu Shui woke up. She was holding her head and didn't understand what was going on. Ahead of her, she saw Zhao. She thought it was Bei, but his aura seemed different from before. She was behind everything that was happening and only watched as the ghost messengers sizzled the deity. The deity himself at this moment was letting out horrible screams that made his hair stand on end. Zhao mouthed whatever he yelled, "This fast, he won't straighten up." He sent his dark powers into the deity to take something away. He needed the energy clot that the deity had previously formed. After a second, it was already in his hand. He also uttered, "Zhao Hua, your hatred is so strong, I can't let it go unchecked." In addition, he said, "I think I know your pain, so I will let you be a part of me." At this moment, Zhao intended to swallow the sphere. After he did so, he felt a surge of energy. He liked the taste very much, the taste of divinity. Watching all of this, Mu Shui was very frightened, as Zhao smelled the scent of another deity, intending to devour her as well. He approached Mu Shui. "If you look closely, this girl is pretty good. It would be a pity to eat one like this." Leaning his head toward her, he asked her to become his woman. He said she could control her own destiny. Pushing Zhao away and aiming an icy pulse at him, she asked what he was saying. This amused Zhao. He thought that human women were really strange creatures. He could actually hear the girl's heart beating fast. If she says no, her body says otherwise. With a shout, "Shut your mouth!" She tried once more to attack Zhao with her ice pulse. He stood before her without any fear. She must have misunderstood him. He doesn't ask her to become his woman, he orders her to do so. Screaming, "Arrogant bastard, I'll finish you off," she lunged at him. But it was all even. Zhao blocked her punch without any difficulty. After which he bent her over and immediately kissed her. It was a very beautiful sight. The girl began to realize that Zhao was sucking the energy out of her, and her strength began to leave her. And that's where we see Bei. Somewhere in Zhao's subconscious, he was shackled by chains that prevented him from moving. It turned out that Zhao had blocked his mind with a chain. Turning to Zhao, Bei said if he thought that he had captured his body forever, that he was deeply mistaken. Bei tried to free himself with all his might, but the chains were holding him back very tightly. Then Zhao appeared. He told Bei to listen to him. He wouldn't really kill him. All he needed to do was to take full possession of his body. Only then could he get a powerful force. Bei was so annoyed by Zhao's betrayal that he was ready to kill him on the spot. Still, the inner anger took its toll and Bei broke the chain. Zhao didn't understand how this was possible. How was he able to free himself? He didn't lend him his own strength. Did he really have his own? Walking brutally towards Zhao, Bei said he needed to train the dog. Zhao was furious. He couldn't understand where Bei got so much confidence from. He had always been a loser. Zhao's fur even stood up in fear. Still, he pulled himself together and told Bei that if he were him, he wouldn't be such an overconfident brat. He's on his turf. Zhao decided to teach him a lesson and sent a large number of demonic beings to the place where Bei was. They got close to Bei and surrounded him. But Bei's not scared anymore. He's determined to show who's boss. In an instant, the creatures were modeled. Zhao looked at all of this from above and didn't understand how Bei managed to summon the divine thunder fury. He asked him, how was he able to use this spell? But Bei only replied that he had no idea what the divine thunder fury was. He asked him to stop talking nonsense and ordered him to urgently come to him to teach him a lesson. Zhao realized that there was something obviously wrong with this situation. How could the brat have such strength? And then it hit him. It was Yerlin's spell. How could this brat use it? Not only that, he must be connected to Erlin. That's impossible. Zhao turned to Bei again and said that he didn't care where he got his strength from, since it was useless inside his body anyway. Licking his lips, Zhao mentioned the devouring void. It turns out he didn't devour all the deities, Buddhas, and demons at all. He had only locked them in the devouring void. He went on to tell Bei that none of the aforementioned creatures would be able to destroy the absorbing void, let alone a human being. He also mentioned that time doesn't move in this place, so Bei will never age or die. At the end, he added that Bei should be grateful to him. Bai realized that Zhao was mocking him. He vowed to himself that he would be an idiot if he believed the words Zhao said. At these words, Zhao replied that he was being completely serious. But Bei couldn't listen to this nonsense anymore, so he jumped up from his seat and headed towards Zhao. The guy realized that their battle with Zhao was inevitable. He must defeat him to regain control of his body. The protagonist shouted and got closer and closer to the enemy. When Bei struck, Zhao seemed to vanish into thin air as Bei struck into the void. That really pissed off Bei. He exclaimed, "Did the stinking dog get away?" But Zhao only called Bei a moron in response. Did he really think he had any chance of winning? Continuing his speech, he said that the guy's body was now his forever. He'll be here forever. Except that he'd drop in on him once in a while. Bei couldn't believe those words. Was that really the end of it? All he could do was shout after Zhao to come back and keep fighting. All that will surround Bei in the years to come are the ruins of a consuming void. But Bei was clearly up to something, and he kept going somewhere. He stopped and wondered how long he had been walking, for the scenery around him had not changed at all. He finally realized that the stinking dog must have been telling the truth. He couldn't overcome the engulfing void on strength alone. He looked at these ruins, at the blazing sun, at the crescent moon, and couldn't believe it. Was he really stuck here forever? He fell to the ground from exhaustion and said that it seemed he could not change anything. Letting out a tear, he could only hope that the stinky dog would protect Yue Er. He apologized to her for leaving her alone, but suddenly our protagonist woke up to someone calling him. Puzzled, he jumped up from his seat and shouted out, "Who called me? Called me! Called me! Called me!" The protagonist thought he was having some kind of auditory hallucination, but a voice kept calling him. The boy squinted a little and thought that since his name was called, he should say he was here. Bei looked at some creature who in turn called Bei his brother. The creature also added that Bei had an unusual bone structure and looked gorgeous and attractive. This creature was a real sweetheart. It asked Bei if he'd do him a favor. The creature made very cute eyes and asked Bei to get him out of here. To the main character, it looked like a rabbit. He didn't understand what a real rabbit and a talking rabbit was doing here. Bei joked that he can pull radishes out of the ground, but not rabbits. That rabbit may look cute, but he could be some kind of demon. We need to get him out in the open first. The first thing Bei asked was how could the rabbit bury itself in the ground? To which he replied that he was one of the jade rabbits from the Moon Palace. One day, Sister Chani asked him to pull 2 radishes out of the ground. He had no idea that the stupid dog would come and eat the moon. If anything, Shen Ye is the goddess of the moon. The rabbit continued talking and said that half of the Moon Palace was swallowed up in this place, along with all the soil of the moon. Bei immediately stood up and joked that he could now be considered a man who had stepped on the moon. But the rabbit kept insisting that Bei get him out. The guy asked why he should help him in case he's a demon. The stinky dog makes everyone seem suspicious to Bei. But the rabbit replied that in this world all are equal, so there is no death. Bei couldn't believe it. Rabbit was already pissed off and suggested to Bei that he reach out to him, and he in turn would fulfill any request. Still, the bunny's cute eyes managed to win Bei over, and he agreed to help him. The guy quickly grabbed Kroll by the ears and started yanking. It looks like the rabbit is in obvious pain, but Bei tells him to keep his snotty mouth shut since he hasn't even started yet. Making the same eyes as the cat from Shrek, the rabbit told the guy not to grab his ears so roughly, as they were very sensitive. Grabbing the rabbit by the head, Bei alerted him that he was beginning to pull. Bei pulled with all his might while the rabbit screamed in pain. Because the pet was screaming really hard, it was disturbing Bei and he couldn't concentrate. Still, the ground around the rabbit began to crack. With incredible strength, Bei pulled the earth crawl. Then he fell to the ground like a meteorite. Some muscular figure appeared in the cloud of dust. Holy shit, that rabbit is a real bodybuilder. Looks like he's watching Sam Sleek's videos too. Showing Bei the heart, rabbit thanked him for his help and said that he could now fulfill any request as a thank you. Bei, for his part, stared at him and couldn't understand what kind of style this was. People should obviously get used to it. The rabbit replied that his body had become like that from the underground pressure. Then he reminded Bei again of any wish he had. Bei still had little trust in this overpumped rabbit, but there was no choice but to hope for the best. Naturally, his desire was to destroy this consuming void and return to Earth. After Bei finished, the rabbit pretended as if he hadn't heard anything. Rabbit had explained to him that the absorbing void was literally indestructible. Almost no one could get out of here or he'd be long gone by now. The guy was interested in the word almost. Somebody did manage to get out, didn't they? Rabbit replied that yes, there was one who could get out of here. It is adored by countless deities and fairies. It is worshipped by warriors. Even a rabbit is willing to give its heart to it. The god of war called Erlon is the conqueror of all three worlds. But the rabbit added that after that god broke through the engulfing void, he left something here. And what is it, Bei asked? The rabbit skipped lightning fast over Bei and hit the big rock that was behind the protagonist's back. Shards of stone flew apart. Bei didn't realize what this madman was doing. However, the rabbit turned to Bei and said that this was the one Yerlin had left behind. It was a war god's sword called the Devil Thug, to which Bei replied, "What the hell is a devil's thug?" By the looks of it, it's just an ordinary rusty sword. But the rabbit indignantly said that whoever could pull it out would get to cut through the engulfing void and get out. "Is this sword really that strong?" Bei asked. Rabbit replied that, "Of course it is. It's just that mortals don't know anything about it. This sword has been Erlin's main weapon and has accompanied him in battle for many years. It is a sword of unfathomable power." However, the rabbit admitted that when it was buried, he saw countless deities and demons who were trying to pull out this sword. But when they just touched the Devil Thug, they burned to death. With his confession, he wanted to warn Bei not to pull out his sword. But damn it, Bei had already pulled out his sword. That gave the rabbit a big shock. Bei was a pro at pulling it out. Rabbit kept calling Bei his little brother and didn't understand how he was able to pull out the sword with such ease. Bei rebuked the rabbit for praising the sword so much. The guy held it in his hands and it's still the same ordinary broken sword. He didn't feel any power in it. Bei asked the rabbit what they should do next. Well, since the rabbit had never seen anyone pull out a sword, he had no idea what to do next. When Bei raised his sword above his head, he was immediately pierced by a multitude of lightning bolts. The rabbit was scared out of his wits. He said there could be consequences. When he called Bei his brother, he asked him if he was all right. The main character finally felt the power of the sword. He liked it very much, except he didn't understand why this power seemed so familiar. At the same time, the rabbit was yelling at Bei to put his sword to his heart. He had to give it his best shot. He might even be able to cut through space. Bei interjected, "How is it to bring a sword to the heart?" Bei placed the sword right in front of his chest. Rabbit said that was the correct position. Now he needed to feel the power of the sword and merge with it. The boy clenched his teeth and concentrated. Suddenly something began to happen. A beam of light shot up into the sky. The devilish thug flew with incredible strength, raising clouds of dust behind him. The sword was flying through the sky like a madman, seemingly happy to be free again. But suddenly the sword changed trajectory very quickly. He headed straight for our protagonist and stopped literally within an inch of Bei's eye. Bei was not in the least bit frightened and asked the sword to stop. The devilish thug seemed to obey him, twisting in the air. The sword turned its hilt toward Bei. This gesture really surprised the protagonist. The sword probably wants him to take it. Without thinking long, Bei grasped the hilt of the sword that was exploring incredible power. Bei felt a pull from the sword, which meant he was about to take off. Bei held out his hand to the rabbit and told him to grab onto it so he could get him out of here. Making a cute face, the rabbit called BOE brother again, and added that only he was destined to become the chosen one. He thinks that only BAE can control the sword, and if he touches the protagonist, he will turn into a fried rabbit. When Bay left, he promised to rescue the rabbit. The rabbit replied that they would meet again if they were meant to. Rabbit will look for his mistress for now, and they will wait together for good news from BAE. But it wasn't that simple. BEI felt a strong resistance that pulled him back in. But it seems the power of the devil's thug is enough to shatter the engulfing void. At this time on Earth, Xiao sensed something. He immediately knew something was wrong. It was like he had a lump in his throat. Just a moment later, the tip of a sword showed from his mouth. He started coughing non-stop and tried to cough up that sword as soon as possible. When he did, he couldn't believe his eyes. The devil thug lay before him. But how is that possible? Suddenly, Xiao grabbed the chain around his neck. Well, it wasn't Xiao anymore. It was BEI chasing Xiao out of his body. Xiao's consciousness didn't understand how this was possible because BEI was trapped in an absorbing void. There was no way he could get out, but it was already a foregone conclusion. BEI pulled Xiao out of himself, and he in turn couldn't believe that he had lost to a human child. How could it be that the devil thug had chosen a brat like him? Bai finally kicked Xiao out of his body. Naturally, Xiao resented such a gesture, and the dog crashes into the rock with incredible force, causing a large explosion and a cloud of smoke. He was clearly depressed and powerless at that moment. At this time, BEI was coming out of the dust cloud to meet the girl. He smiled and pronounced if he was doing something weird, then let her apologize to him. The guy ran straight into her chest. The girl looked at him and wondered if he had passed out. But she was building on both BEI and Xiao, so much so that she threw them out of her reach. The next day at school, BEI and Xiao were walking down an alleyway. The protagonist spoke angrily to Xiao. He said that how could he just get rid of him and now follow him around trying to apologize? He seriously believed him. Did he eat his conscience by any chance? Xiao said he was just kidding. He even kissed that girl for BEI and he's not grateful. But in his subconscious, Xiao was thinking that he was now under the full control of this guy since he had been chosen by the devil thug. He remembered that when he had fought with Erlin, he had been hurt by the sword. He also didn't understand why Erlin had hidden this sword in his body. BEI was angry that he had to thank Xiao for something. This dog should be ashamed of himself because he had betrayed him mercilessly. BAE called himself such an idiot. How could he believe such a stupid dog? Seeing the whole situation, Xiao put his paw on Bei's shoulder, apologized to him, and said that he just needed to trust him one more time. He wouldn't lie to him again. Xiao, in order to express all his sincerity, uses something he tried very hard to hide. Another power from the absorbing void that would help in future battles. And above his head, some sort of portal began to open. B couldn't believe that Xiao was telling the truth and warned him that if he tried to trick him again, he'd be in trouble. He added that he should not even think of grabbing his body again, or he would cut him in half with the sword. Naturally, Xiao was frightened and asked him not to pull out his sword. Xiao tried to convince BEI that he was telling the truth. The absorbing void not only endlessly absorbs, but also endlessly releases. Xiao said that before becoming Yerlan's subordinate, he ate all of heaven and earth, so he doesn't even know what's in his stomach, but assures BEI that there's a lot of treasure in there. Xiao also said that from being in the human world, he was too weak. The power he would give BEI would also absorb his demonic powers. Therefore, BEI must begin hunting demons and continue to accumulate demonic powers so that he can unleash the full power of the absorbing void. BEI was surprised that the absorbing void even had such an action. BEI thought about it for a moment because the suggestion was quite plausible. He had seen what the absorbing void could do. It really was extremely powerful. After all, even with the help of the devil's thug, he could barely get out of it. Well, damn, Bei was still wary of that suggestion. What if it was just another ploy by the stinking dog to get him to hoard his demonic power to pump up his own? Xiao was angry at the fact that BEI didn't believe him. He had promised him to spit out the peerless deity, Sister Chenying. Apparently, he knew that BEI was cooperating with the rabbit. Bai Ming couldn't make up his mind. He realized that this power was an unreliable bullshit, and it could cause a lot of problems. Just as suddenly, from the side, someone greeted BAE. It turned out to be Yue Er. Bai, in turn, asked her how she was doing. The girl replied that she was fine and didn't have a scratch on her. She got embarrassed and said he ran away too suddenly yesterday. What business could he have? But suddenly her mood changed. and she said it was no big deal. Holding out her hand to Bei, she wanted them to go together. As they walked, Yahello apologized for what, giving Bei an interrogation. If the guy wanted to tell her something, he would directly do so. This caused Bei to smile. When they got closer to the school, Bei was more than a little wary. He could still feel the presence of the enemy's aura. He thought he must have imagined it. Suddenly, two beautiful Lamborghinis pulled up to the school. A handsome guy got out of the car, and the girls behind his back were whispering that he was very handsome, rich, and had won this life from birth. They were very jealous. These two guys were right behind Bei and Yahello. One of them said there was a stunning beauty in front of them. When the guy in the Lamborghini looked at Bei, he recognized him as a student who had saved many people recently. The rest of the bunch were like animals competing to see who could get Yahello first. One of them was suspicious of the kid next to her, thinking that he might be her boyfriend. Either the girl or the guy replied that either way, he would separate them no matter how close they were to each other. The guy turned to his friends and told them to just wait and see. A couple of seconds later, this bunch ran into our heroes. Bei looked at these guys and didn't understand why they were staring at him. One guy in the company reached out to Yahello and asked her if he could meet her and invite her into his heart. Yahello turned to Bei and said that this guy would probably need medicine now. From such words, the main character was surprised. The girl took Bei by the waist and started pulling him behind her, telling those guys that they should hurry up and take their friend to the doctor for some medicine. The kid couldn't believe that he had just been rejected by some high school girl. The other guys were standing behind him and just mocking him. Mu Shui appeared out of nowhere. The boys never gave up hope of getting anyone tonight. But Mu Shui walked up to Bei. Mu Shui looked at him with a fiery gaze. Bei even had a lump in his throat from that look. Yahello didn't understand what was going on. She coughed to lighten the situation. Mu Shui turned to the protagonist and told him that after class at noon, he would find her in the school pool. With such a statement, she had more than embarrassed Bei, and Yahello began to suspect something. At exactly noon, Mu Shui was coming out of the pool. She had already waited for Bei. She was sprawled out on the edge of the pool. She was very hot and wanted to cool off with Bei. Such a sight made all the guys' noses start to bleed. Yahello in turn clapped her hand on Bei's shoulder, and she warned him slyly that if he dared to fall in love, she would personally report him to the headmaster. Taming was thrown into a sweat. He didn't realize what was happening. In a few minutes, Bei stood on the edge of the pool and tried to find Mu Shui. He thought she was deliberately deceiving him because of what happened recently. Suddenly his gaze fell on the water in which he saw a bad aura. Suddenly Zhao appeared, who warned the protagonist of the danger that could overtake him. However, Mu Shui appeared out of the water. She turned her attention to the main character's arm, wondering if it was a consequence of the snake's power that he had absorbed. She kept thinking that she wasn't wrong about Bei. If he helped her, that would be fine. However, Bei was embarrassed by what he saw. He complimented the girl and said that she must have worked hard to keep herself in such shape. She replied that water was her element, and she needed to sense the state of water to better understand and control ice spells. Bei in turn replied that he now understood everything. The girl also asked the protagonist, did he notice that even though the deity had been eliminated, the dark aura remained? Our hero thought his senses hadn't failed him. He also realized that because if the dark aura wasn't gone, then all the people in the school were in danger. Leaning over to Bei, Mu Shui offered him cooperation. If they worked together, they would have a better chance of winning. Bei hesitated, but Zhao asked him why he was doubting. They should rather agree they are in the same boat and will definitely achieve more success if they work together. But there was a reason Zhao was so worried about it. He realized that this was a great opportunity for him. He would be able to absorb and accumulate demonic powers. He just needed to get the brat to agree. And then Bei realized that Zhao was right after all. He and Mu Shui have the same goal. With her divine power, he would definitely be able to avoid many problems. But there was one thing. The girl, in turn, couldn't understand why he was worried. Did he think that he would be in danger again? Or did he think that such cases would not do him any good? So she decided that if he worked with her, she would reward him with more money. Zhao insisted that Bei should agree as soon as possible. He should be brave, especially this is the only chance in our protagonist's life when he can get close to the goddess. But Bei was already beginning to suspect the stinky dog. He was very lively and must be up to something again. The girl kept persuading Bei with money, saying that if he helped, he would be given a large reward. It turned out that some guy from school, or rather, his father paid the girl a large sum of money and asked her to solve the issue with the dark aura when he found out about the incident. BA couldn't believe the girl would give him everything. Wouldn't she take a penny? To which she replied that she is a member of the Night Hunters, and the whole point of existence is to put the human world back on the right track. She's not interested in money. Zhao couldn't stand it anymore and tried to talk the guy into agreeing too. But BEI shouted at Zhao, telling him to shut his mouth. After which replied the girl that unfortunately, he couldn't promise her anything. At this time, Zhao looked at BEI and couldn't understand what had happened to this guy. BA continued his speech. He said that he was just a simple man, and he didn't want to defeat demons and monsters and do righteous deeds on behalf of heaven. The girl was furious at what she heard as she offered him money for it, and he refuses. The guy emphasized that his powers are unstable. It's impossible to predict when he'll lose control again. Bei turned around and said he had unfinished business. He's leaving. The girl shouted at his back that he couldn't stay away, as it was his destiny and he couldn't escape it. In the end, the girl was disappointed in BAE. She thought he'd have some guts. Suddenly our hero was stopped by someone. It was the teacher. BA didn't understand what he was doing here or what he wanted from him. Turns out teacher was angry that yesterday BAE dropped out of the exam and today he's suddenly having an affair. Because of this, the teacher told BAE he was expelled from school. BA couldn't believe it. How could he forget that his teacher didn't like him? Zhao, in turn, couldn't understand why this brat with impressive strength still cared about attending school. People are really incomprehensible and stupid creatures. BA tried to justify himself to the teacher in some way, but suddenly the bell rang. The gramophone told all the teachers and students to go immediately to the assembly hall, and the principal would be waiting for them with an important announcement. Making a sly face, the teacher added that he would report everything about BEI Ming to the principal as well. There were many people gathered in the assembly hall. The principal stood on the stage. He explained that the reason for yesterday's destruction was the poorly done repair work. On behalf of the school, he deeply apologizes to all those affected. Next, the principal took out a letter. It was a decision made by the school staff regarding one of the students. The teacher looked at this letter and thought, this is definitely his application for expulsion from BEI Ming School. Suddenly, the director asked BA to come up on stage. Bai Ming stood on the stage as if he had been wronged, while listening to the principal as well. In the end, the principal said that BAE was really being expelled from school. All the people in the audience were shocked, including our protagonist. In the hall, the students began to discuss this news. Bei was really upset. He had saved so many lives, and he was just expelled. Zhao tried to console him, saying that if he wanted, they could eat all those scumbags. But BA told him to shut up. He didn't want to be fooled again, and he wouldn't fall for his tricks again. But suddenly, the principal added something to his speech. This something caught BEI and Yue Air's attention. The director said that he expresses great appreciation and gratitude to BAE for his brave deeds. Even if school results are important, Braveheart is most valuable. It turns out they not only do not expel him from school, but also decided to give some kind of award to our hero, thus causing him a shock. The teacher, being with a look on his face like he was pushing on the toilet, couldn't believe what he was hearing. And all the hypocritical creatures who were in the audience, that is, the students of the school, suddenly began to applaud. BI asked Xiao if he thought things would turn out this way. He replied that it was just luck. Then the principal introduced everyone, the student representative. And it was Mu Shui who was carrying a bouquet addressed to BI. Stepping closer, she threw the bouquet at the guy. The girl turned away and BIE assumed she must be mad at him for turning her down. She's being a real bitch. After Bei came down from the stage, a teacher came up to him and asked him to come to her office after the event. She needed to discuss his grades. Naturally, he promised to come straight to her when he was free. But as the teacher turned away and began to walk away, a dark aura began to radiate from her. Zhao thought that if the dark energy was surrounding the beautiful teacher again, the problem must still be unsolved. Bei in turn promised to protect the teacher by any means necessary. Next, we see our main characters walking somewhere in the school. BI asked Xiao, would his absorbing void be able to absorb this dark energy around the teacher? The dog proudly raised his head and replied that it was like a finger on the pavement for him. Who does he think he is? But he added that there was no way to absorb her now. After all, he needs a physical body. Bei immediately declassifies the stinky dog scheme. The dog tries to take over his body again. Smiling cheekily, Zhao asked the guy to stop suspecting him of everything. This time he was serious. Bei continued to squat. He realized that in any case, he would have to team up with Zhao when he met a monster stronger than him. He further remembered that the snake they had killed had absorbed a lot of demonic power. The question that followed was whether they would be able to pump absorbing void if they used this demonic power. He replied that it was natural. They can also get magic weapons or the help of any gods or demons. The guy really hoped that this power would work when something bad happened. He can't let Teacher Tian die. Zhao said that he could rely on him and he wouldn't be disappointed in his decision. But unfortunately, Zhao had something bad in mind, and his plan was coming to fruition. Bi and the dog were almost to the teacher's lounge, but they heard some loud talking. Using his X-ray vision, Bae saw some guy in a place with a teacher. The kid was confessing his love for her. Bi couldn't understand where he got the skill from, and Zhao explained that it was heat induction. Bi was puzzled and asked what it was. Zhao explained that when he absorbed the power of that snake, he must have acquired its skills, since heat induction was possessed by snakes. Ba, meanwhile, was jubilant that he was so strong. He realized that he could now hunt creatures and take their powers. Next, we see this guy in the teacher's lounge using force on the teacher. Apparently, he's been rebuffed. From such stress, the teacher radiated more and more dark energy. The heroes entered the office and Bei coughed, thus drawing attention to himself. Zhao realized that the situation was such that it wasn't the teacher who needed to be saved, but this guy, since the aura in the room was terrifying. Still, the aggressive guy left the teacher alone and promised Bei to get even with him. The door slammed shut and the teacher thanked the guy for his help. Bei pounded his chest. He was ready to defend the teacher in any situation. The teacher was very happy about this, as she now had a personal bodyguard. Zhao at this time couldn't understand why the dark aura had disappeared from the room. Was he imagining it? The dog sniffed her feet and assumed that the strength of the dark energy depended on the teacher's emotions. There's something wrong with her. Further down the street, we see Yue. She called out to Bao. The girl spoke to Bi, but he didn't listen to her at all, as his thoughts were occupied with the dark energy that was rapidly accumulating around that teacher. Naturally, the girl could not stand it and yelled at our hero. Then Bi saw some man in a tuxedo restraining Tian's teacher. It turned out that she was being put into some car and taken away to an unknown destination. He immediately started following the car before the guy told Yue that he had to hurry and they would see each other tomorrow. Bei stopped and realized that if he didn't use his super running, he wouldn't be able to catch up to the car. Suddenly, he snatched the same mask he had worn before from the passers-by again. Now he could run without worrying about being discovered. Bi men raced across the rooftops, continuing to chase after the car. Just as suddenly, the car made a maneuver and was able to drive into the opposite corner. Subsequently, this maneuver caused Bei and Zhao to lose the trail. The protagonist decided to try another ability of that snake. He prepared a multitude of snakes from his hand, preparing to release them. The snakes immediately went in search of the trail. They searched every inch of the area. Still, they found their target. Some guy was taking a teacher into the building. That's when Bei was noticed by some kid. He didn't understand what Bei was doing on his window grill. Bei asked that the baby not panic. But the child with all his might began to call for his mom's help. Bei was not confused and continued his mission. Suddenly, the entire space was covered in red threads. The guy stopped on the roof to figure out what was wrong and who had pulled those strings. She-girl came out on the roof holding a teddy bear and resenting the one who dared to run around in broad daylight. It really annoyed her. Bi, meanwhile, was shocked that he would have to deal with the threads again. Xiao had warned him that they had a high concentration of spiritual power. At that moment, Bei's body started to become covered in scales. He didn't care how strong the demon who'd pulled those strings was, he'd still kick his ass. After which, Guy immediately rushed into battle without any hesitation. He was only interested in one question: why the demon wasn't attacking him. It turned out Bei couldn't find this demon. He couldn't even feel its demonic aura. Zhao was also anxious. Even he didn't feel the demon's presence. Maybe it's not a demon at all, the dog thought. The protagonist didn't focus on the demon as he had to rush to his teacher's aid. He jumped away from the building and set off again, avoiding the sharp threads. There was a girl standing on another building watching them. She said she only let them go because she was in a good mood because she was attending an anime exhibition. But because Bae is overconfident, she decides to honor his wish and show herself after all. Bi and Zhao immediately sensed something wrong. When they turned around, Zhao noticed a strong pulse of energy approaching from the rear, and Bi was surprised that this demon had finally decided to show itself. The girl liked the guy's character, and so she promised to kill him quickly without any agony. Zhao stood and saw on the horizon that this creature was approaching. He felt an unusual strength. It looks like it's going to be a tough fight. But at our protagonist, his serpent armor suddenly began to disintegrate. It was not a good time at all. Zhao affirmatively said that there was no need to panic since they had his powers. But suddenly the guy started running with all his might, thus pulling Zhao, who was dragging on the ground and cursing. The girl was surprised that as soon as Bei sensed danger, he ran away. Without thinking long, she began to catch up with our hero as if she had organized a hunt for him. Suddenly someone called out to her. The voice said that her favorite cookies were already baked and she had to go back. The little girl was getting and watching the heroes run away. This time, she would let them go because the day hunter's service was complete. Our heroes continued to run with all their might, not knowing that they are no longer in danger. Bai was furious that the snake's strength had suddenly run out. His demonic power is lacking? Zhao maintained that it was because he had activated different skills just like that without any need. Bai finally made it to some place with a pool and a beautiful villa on the grounds. The guy claimed they arrived at the exact place the teacher should be inside. At this time, Zhao was lying on the pavement, sticking out his tongue. He was very tired catching up with Bei. When they tried to go inside, they were stopped by two guards who said that this secret club was for special visitors. No one is allowed to enter without an invitation. Bei was horrified by this information. He remembered reading about him in street flyers. And then he went into a stupor. If this really was the place, then the teacher was in even greater danger. But the guards wouldn't let him in because this place isn't for a beggar's chocolatier. They were about to punch him in the face. Bei stepped away from them and apologized. He was really just a schoolboy who wandered in by accident. But Zhao was not happy with this outcome because Bei could have torn them to shreds. But he was afraid again. Zhao then asked why the guy was backing up every time. Bei replied that if he went on a rampage and gave himself away, it could further jeopardize the teacher's safety. They kept going somewhere as if they were looking for something. Turns out they were looking for the part of the fence that isn't too high and is in the blind spot for the security camera. Bei wanted to take advantage of the residual forces of thermal induction, but he couldn't do anything because his strength was really very low. Xiao began to reprimand him for not teaming up with Mu Shu. If he had agreed, he would have had a better chance of gaining demonic powers, so he would have had a better chance of saving the teacher as well. Bai was furious that the dog was talking about it right now. Xiao in turn told him to shut his mouth or they'd be noticed. They never gave up hope that they could make it to the fence and kept climbing. Siav wanted to motivate Bae with all his might, even calling him a piece of shit and threatening to eat him. When still our hero managed to climb the fence, he saw a pool where beautiful girls were swimming. However, he didn't watch them for long as he fell down from the fence. The girls in turn started screaming with all their might that some pervert had gotten in. A couple of guards who were standing at the entrance were discussing the noise that was coming from the hot springs for women. The radio told them it was the guy who wanted to come in a few minutes ago. We are transported inside the house where some serious-looking man was sitting on the couch talking to Teacher Tian. He claimed that Teacher Tian's parents ran away and left him owing him 10 million yuan. She couldn't believe what she was hearing since her parents aren't like that. The man kept threatening the teacher with payback. He claimed that she would never be able to save the money from her miserable salary. The woman was crying as she had given all her money to her parents to pay off the debt. The man came closer to her and said he didn't want to be a villain. So he had a proposition. He heard that there are a lot of attractive girls in high school. He ordered me to bring him some hotties and he'd forget about the debt. He put his hand on Teacher Tian's shoulder and asked, "Isn't he generous?" She in turn jumped out of her chair and said he wouldn't lay a finger on the girls. Then the man pushed her, replying that if indeed Tuck did, she would take the girl's place. He immediately pounced on her, trying to hurt her. The woman was choking on her tears and begging for someone to come to her aid. At this time, Bei was grabbed by the guards who were furious at the fact that the guy allowed himself to sneak inside the secret club. Suddenly, some girl came out of nowhere and the guards bowed in front of her. As she got closer and looked at Bei, he seemed like a very interesting boy. The nearby guard asked Miss to return to her room or the master would be looking for her. Xiao tried to read her thoughts, which turned out not to be positive at all. After he read everyone's mind, he could only say one thing: they're screwed. The guards had already intended to kill Bei, but suddenly the room was filled with dark aura. They looked deep into the corridor, and Zhao affirmatively said that it was the same energy that came from that teacher. Why did it suddenly become so strong? Bei already realized that the teacher was in great danger. He had no choice but to use all his strength. Suddenly he stopped. A guy from school came into the room apologizing for the incident Bei had committed. All the girls opened their mouths and started drooling. This guy was really handsome, and he definitely made them horny. When he got close to the guards, he asked them to let Bei go. Well, the guards couldn't figure out what was going on, could they? Bei could only watch the guards leave the room. Now he's saved. Looking at the guy, Bei recognized him as one of the high school hotties who was hitting on Yue Er. The guy suddenly winked at Bei. That gave him goosebumps, and Zhao assumed that he must be that guy who wasn't of traditional orientation. The girls stood shrouded in towels, outraged that the handsome guy had left Bae without any punishment. They threatened him with reprisals and lawsuits, to which the guy replied that there was no need to worry so much, it was just a small thing. It turned out the guy's name was Shen, and he promised to compensate moral damages for each girl. The girls in turn stood looking at him with loving eyes, calling him young master. They said they trusted him. Zhao turned to Bi and told him to look at Shen. The dog argued that the protagonist would never become as handsome, rich, and confident as Shen. However, Shen approached Bei and asked why he was holding back his strength. He was 10 times stronger than all those guards, right? In a friendly manner, Bei replied that it was his own fault, and he didn't want to complicate things. He also apologized for disturbing him. After a couple of seconds, Shen was already watching Bei running towards the exit. He hadn't misjudged Bei's strength after all. But Zhao sensed some sort of catch. This guy is not as simple as he seems. They ran down the corridor and felt that the concentration of dark aura in front was getting bigger and bigger. Ahead of him, he saw a door from which a woman's scream could be heard. The guards were already on the lookout. The men were ready to kick Bei's ass. To their threats, Bei replied that the jokes were over. In the room, the teacher was lying on the floor, and everyone else was looking anxiously at the door, where an intimidating noise could be heard. The boss ordered his subordinates to see what was going on. As soon as one of the guards tried to approach the door, it was immediately broken down. Ba kicked the door with all his might and managed to sneak into the room. He didn't care what was going to happen. He just wanted to protect the teacher. The head of the cartel looked at it all and was shocked. Bei called out to the teacher, asking her if she was okay, after which a gun was immediately pointed at him. The man came closer and inquired who it was that had come galloping in here. Is it a student or some snotty boyfriend? The man added that whoever Bei was, he would be only too happy to play with the teacher in front of him. From what she heard, the teacher said she would do anything she was told, just don't touch Bae. Such words infuriated the boss, and he kicked the teacher in the stomach, claiming that he had not yet repaid Guy for hurting his guards. From what he saw, Bei screamed that he was going to kill them all, after which a shot rang out. The teacher clutched her hands to her face and began to cry. Bai was already starting to twist in pain as the bullet went straight into his body. Xiao said it was not the time for acting. Well, at that very moment, Bei slammed face down on the floor. Xiao was shocked. He couldn't believe that the guy was even taken by bullets. He had to get up quickly. The boss looked at Bae with disdain and said that even a couple of shots were enough to finish the brat off, if that's his power. But suddenly the boss felt something behind his back. It was the teacher from whom the demon was awakening. She blamed herself for not even being able to protect her student. It turned out that her demon was as self in her body as Xiao was in Bei's body. Demoness asked that the teacher stop blaming herself with this bastard, she will deal with herself. The demoness also added that Bae was responsible for his own death. Either you kill or you get killed. There's no other way to survive in this world. The boss ordered the guards to quickly eliminate the creature. As soon as the guard approached, the demoness began to attack. She advised him to surrender immediately. It was impregnable as each side could repel a blow. She even managed to break one guard's arm using her dark aura. Talking to the teacher's mind, she told her that no one would dare use her as a toy. Many shots rang out. The boss yelled for a ceasefire because he wants the girl alive. He still has to get his money. The demoness looked at the bullets flying at her and only smiled at how pathetic her opponents were. At this time, Xiao asked Bei how long he was going to lie around for. His favorite teacher had mutated. Bei could only mumble that he had stopped the bullets, but they still stunned him. Xiao thought Bei was a piece of shit. He has his powers, but he still continues to embarrass himself. Bei shook off his clothes and promised himself that next time he would use his strength wisely so that there would be enough for further battles. But Xiao said they need to deal with it first. The teacher at this time has bound all the guards with her dark aura. To her, the screams of those scum are like music to her ears. At this time, the boss was heading for the exit. He didn't understand what the hell this was. How did an innocent teacher suddenly turn into a monster? However, the exit was blocked by a dark aura. He tried to pull out a gun, threatening the demoness in the process. Suddenly, this brutal man was restrained by the demoness. She was going to have a good time with him. Facing the fear of death, the man began to beg Teacher Tian's forgiveness. He promised to forget all his debts if she would let him go. The demon put her finger to her lips and thought it was not a bad suggestion. Well, that was out of the question. The man had already said goodbye to his life. But suddenly there was a shout from BAE asking the teacher to stop. Bei didn't realize that the teacher was no longer in the room. Demon replied that she was actually helping and protecting her. Without her help, such a fool would never have survived in this rotten world. BI felt like he was being spoken to by a completely different person. He asked, Xiao, is the teacher possessed by some kind of demon? But Xiao didn't sense a demon. The reason was something else. To the dog, it looked like some dark aura had awakened a hidden personality in the teacher. Bai wanted to bring the teacher back to his senses in some way, but his right leg was back in disrepair and he could no longer feel it. The same thing happened to his arm. Things were very bad. Then Xiao asked Bi to be a good boy and give him his body. That was the only way he would save everyone. But Bi mentioned that Xiao can absorb dark energy directly. Is he just messing around again? The dog replied that it was a different story, and if the boy gave him his body, he could absorb all the dark energy with his mouth. But it hit Bei. He realized what to do. His plan was that he would bring the teacher to his senses and try to seize control of the dark aura. At that moment, Xiao would absorb the energy. Xiao rebuked the guy for lending him his body instead of coming up with a plan. The demon turned to Bi asking him, was he the one who was going to rescue Teacher Tian? The demon realized that BAE was the teacher's weakness. She needs to get rid of that weakness. Only then will she become stronger. After which she immediately attacked BEI, enveloping him with her dark aura. The demon held BEI like a dog on a leash. She wondered, why is he so worried about Teacher Tian? With a sneaky look at the guy, she realized he probably had some hidden agenda. Bei rejected it. He never thought of anything like that. Xiao looked at all of this and realized that BEI was lying. The demon took Bei by the chin and said it was okay. Turning to the teacher's mind, she said that this boy had special feelings for her. Then the demoness leaned in close to Bei, telling him she was going to teach him one last life lesson. Apparently, she wanted to kiss him, but Bei immediately tried to deviate from her. He was saying that a demon couldn't use a teacher's body so recklessly. Such words only made the demon laugh. To her, Bei was even more naive than she'd thought. It was clear from her words that he was not worth resisting. The demon's body was on top of Bei's. The more the boy resisted, the more the creature became aroused. The hero was wondering what happened in the teacher's life now that she had such a personality. The demon was trying to corrupt BAE. She kept insisting on close contact. After that, the demoness completely saddled the guy. She liked this outcome. BAE couldn't even breathe at this point. The protagonist realized that he had to act now or he would pass out before he could bring the teacher to his senses. Xiao watched what was happening. He really enjoyed watching this, since he didn't even have to confirm his age, unlike all of us famous websites. BI is very angry at Xiao's inaction. He asked for help. Xiao decided to do something and began to insist again that BAE give him the body. If he agreed, he would deal with her in no time. Bei was practically choked up, but he wouldn't settle for anything. In fact, Bei really liked the teacher a lot, and that's why the demoness's touch excited him. He realized he wasn't a teacher, but it was still her body. He urgently needed to calm down because his arousal was overwhelming. The couple was getting more and more relaxed. The only way BI could do it was to tell the demoness why he cared so much about Teacher Chen. He kept those memories deep in his heart. He wanted to bring the teacher back to the real world. The main character recalled that after the car accident, he went through a hell of a rehabilitation and was finally able to go back to school like a normal person. He had hoped to return to his old happy school life, but something got in the way. That something was his classmates and teachers. They alienated him, and their hypocrisy made his hope for a happy life impossible. He was almost desperate, but suddenly someone addressed him by name and didn't call him a cripple. It was Teacher Tian. She appeared like an angel in his eyes. For the protagonist, her smile was a warm sunshine in a harsh winter. It saved the guy, gave him a chance to start over. We're moving back to Bei. At this point, he was ready to confess his feelings to the teacher. Like a first grader, he mouthed very quickly for the teacher to be his. He would make her happy for life. Zhao looked at it all from the side and almost died laughing. It was indeed a pitiful sight. This behavior infuriated Bei, and he ordered Zhao to stop laughing. But suddenly the teacher spoke in her own voice. She asked the boy, "Is what he said true?" Zhao couldn't believe that Bei had succeeded. The teacher had actually come to her senses. The dark aura began to stabilize and the hero was gradually released. Opening his mouth, Zhao shouted for Bei to hold the teacher. He's about to absorb her energy. But Bei didn't care about that. He hugged Teacher Qin and begged for her forgiveness. Just as suddenly, Bei summoned his chain. He began to absorb the teacher's dark aura. The demon awakened in the teacher again and couldn't believe that really the guy was taking her energy. What the hell was he? If he didn't stop, she would disappear. She wanted to change Bei's mind somehow, but it was all in vain. All the demoness could do was threaten Bei with death. A moment later, the healed teacher was already lying on Bei's shoulder. Of course, the guy apologized for having to play with his feelings. Unfortunately, he had no choice and hoped the teacher would understand him. Bei stood surrounded by his aura and held the teacher in his arms, saying that everything was definitely fine now. Zhao in turn praised Bei. He really managed to surprise him. But suddenly something alerted our dog. The crowd was already rushing toward the front door, reloading their guns. They immediately started shooting. Their goal was to eliminate the protagonist. All their efforts were in vain. Bei stood firm and used his demonic power to block all the bullets that came at him. One of the guards asked for a ceasefire, which undoubtedly surprised his co-workers. They tried to see if any of the bullets had hit Bei, but all they could see in front of them were hundreds of bullets that had embedded themselves in the protective barrier. Then they finally realized that Bei wasn't actually human. The guy complained to the guards that innocent people are suffering because of people like them. With his strongest impulse, he fired the embedded bullets back at the guards. Bei gave them a chance to start their lives with a clean slate, and luckily for them, not a single bullet hit them. The guy turned to them again and told them that if they wanted to live, they should get out of his sight. Bei then held the teacher in his arms, and the guards in turn apologized and rather tried to leave. Zhao looked squeamishly at the fleeing guards. For his part, Bei wanted to get the teacher to the hospital as soon as possible. But Bei was disturbed by one fact. He felt uncomfortable in front of Shun. After all, this place was ruined. Suddenly, Bei heard someone's voice in the hallway. Someone was outraged at the mayhem. It turned out to be Shen. Bei immediately started to justify himself. He promised to pay compensation for all the damages. Zhao asked Bei how he was going to do it. He was a poor man, right? But Shen replied that he didn't need any compensation, and the car to take the teacher to the hospital was already parked outside. Bei happily ran after Shen while saying what a good heart he had. But Zhao was very surprised at this outcome. Zhao was sure that this guy was hiding something. After giving orders to the chauffeur, Bei, Shen, and Zhao drove to the suburban hospital. When they were driving, Zhao was on the roof, and inside the cabin, Bei was admiring the awesome car. Shen replied that he drove it to get groceries. Zhao in turn thought that if Bei obeyed him, he would have accomplished even more. They finally pulled up to the hospital. We see a room in which the doctor says the patient is in stable condition and the teacher is in no danger. The teacher was lying in a hospital bed, and if she had been taken to the hospital a little later, it would have been impossible to thank her. Next, we see Bei and Shen in the hospital lobby. Bei kept thanking them for their help. Shen kept ranting about the teacher's serious condition. Continuing to speak in a friendly tone, Bei asked what kind of injuries the teacher had if she only had scratches. Making a serious face, Bei asked what Shen was up to after all. Shen was dumbfounded by the fact that he had been exposed. Zhao in turn praised Bei for spotting the trick. Bei emphasized that free cheese only comes with a mousetrap. Shen replied to Bei that Bei was absolutely right. He never finds himself in a lose-lose situation. He then threw the phone at him, saying to take a look. Bei caught the phone. He was very curious respectively, and Zhao couldn't wait to see the contents of the phone either. When they looked at the screen, they saw a picture of Bei holding a cab over his head wearing a dog mask. The boy couldn't understand where Shen had gotten that picture. Turns out Shen was sent this picture by one of his friends. With an affirmative tone, Shen said that the photo was definitely Bei. Neither Bei nor Zhao understood how Shen had guessed. Waving his hands, Shen replied that he is an unusual person and very rich, so he will be able to learn anything he wants. Bei was annoyed since there wasn't even a response like that. Shen puts his hand to his chest and says he's not up to anything bad. He just has little plans for the protagonist. In fact, he even admires Bei's strength and courage. Bei was even more shocked after hearing this. Afterward, Shen said the only thing Bei has that he doesn't. It's power. Staggering and unfathomable strength. Shen had it all. Money, women, status. But it wasn't enough to be the main man in the family. He confessed that if he had the power, he could overthrow his brother and become the head of the family. He wanted revenge for his mother. After which Bei and Zhao looked at each other. After assuming his original position, Shen apologized for what had just happened, namely the violent reaction. He said he had no evil intentions, but only wanted Bei's strength and to unite with him. Bai stood there and didn't really understand the point, but promised to help Shen, and Zhao rebuked Bei again, causing him to be irritated. Suddenly a cough was heard from the room. Could it be that teacher Tian woke up? While in bed, the teacher had a terrible dream, begging her sister not to leave. She couldn't live without her. Bei immediately ran up, trying to calm the teacher down. Behind Bei's back, Shen's voice could be heard. He claimed that thanks to his connection, he was able to find out some information about the teacher and her family. Then he said the teacher was talking about her twin sister. Her sister drowned while trying to save her own. Such words shocked Bei. Zhao assumed that if the second personality came out of guilt, then they forcibly absorbed it. Bei must have made a mistake by absorbing the teacher's second personality. At that same second, the phone rang in Bei's pocket. He picked up the phone and immediately heard Yue Er's voice. He was immediately stunned by Yue Er's talking tone. She tried to say something but choked. He was immediately gripped by panic. All he heard in the speaker of the phone was Yue Er screaming and begging for rescue. Suddenly the connection's gone. Bai tried to call Yue Er again, but it was all in vain. Yue Er had lost her connection. She must have been in danger. Shen asked the guy to stay calm and explain what the matter was. Bei said Yue Er's last word was school, so she's definitely there. Shen immediately said that he would send his men there, but Bei refused. He wanted to solve everything himself. He put his hand on Shen Yu's shoulder, saying that he was very grateful to him and offered him to be good friends. But Bei had one last request for Shen. He asked him to stay with the teacher and keep an eye on her. Bei opened the window and said lastly that if Shen ever needed him, he would be sure to help. He and Zhao then jumped out the window into the street. Shen was a little surprised at these ways of exiting the building. He was unusually glad that he had found someone like Bei. With a sinister smile, he realized that he could finally pull off the great plan with Bei's help. His relatives would be in trouble. As the protagonist moved towards the school, Zhao asked, "Is Bei really going to be Shen's errand boy?" The latter replied that they would have a mutually beneficial relationship since Shen has money and he has power. All he had to do was pretend to be a stupid fanatic, so he'd think he was really controlling him. With a chuckle, Zhao replied that when Bei needs to stay himself. Bei then began to visualize his powers to see how much he had left to prevent the incident that happened last time. Zhao said that he had the right thoughts, and if he listened to him, he would succeed even faster. At this moment, Zhao was once again pondering over his sinister plans. He had no desire to take away Bei's physical body. Then Bei got another call from someone. He thought it was Yue Er, but it was Shen. He sent him some video for him to watch. The guy kept running and tried to turn on the video. He soon succeeded and saw a video clip of a high school friend addressing her viewers. In the video, she claimed that a student was missing from their school, and she couldn't let it go unnoticed. The girl pointed to the school and wanted to sneak into it in order to reveal all the secrets. Then a voice was heard in the video asking to stop recording. It was Yue who was saying that she had a bad feeling and they should go home. Bei speculated that this video was taken before Yue called him. Gritting his teeth, the guy ran even faster. He asked for Yue to wait for him. The school was already visible in the distance. A few seconds later, Bei and Zhao were at the very spot where the girls entered the school. Because Bei was conserving his demonic energy, he couldn't use his search snakes. Accordingly, he asked Zhao to use his sense of smell to determine where Yue was. This made Zhao angry since he didn't like that Bei was putting his strength before him. However, he started flattering the dog and complimenting him. This approach worked, and Zhao immediately rushed off to sniff out the territory. But damn it, Zhao couldn't smell anything. He'd always been able to before. Bei got another call from Shen saying he sent him another video. There was a friend on the video again who said they'd be heading towards the school archives, where they'd find clues as to where the guy from the school disappeared to. But suddenly she was grabbed by Yue, pulling her by the hand and telling her that they needed to run. The camera on my phone buzzed. After that, the camera still managed to capture a certain monster, which looked very frightening. The recording was interrupted again. Bei was panicked and said they must be in the school archives. He replied that he had already caught the scent and they could go. With their heels blazing, they headed toward the school archives. In a moment, our heroes were standing in front of the tall building that was the school archives. Bei was confused by the fact that he felt nothing and saw no demonic aura. Zhao also confirmed it. Suddenly, a huge black paw stepped onto the pavement. The heroes thought everything was safe here, but there was already a huge dog-like monster above them, wanting to devour them. This three-headed dog stood over the protagonists and contemplated how to kill them. Bite their heads off or just snap their necks. One of the heads lunged at our heroes, but Bei and Zhao sensed the danger and dodged the punch with lightning speed. Bai then asked Zhao, how could they not have sensed the presence of that monster earlier? Zhao replied that the demon couldn't hide from his sense of smell, but there was an exception. This exception is called the mirror barrier that the monster possessed. That's why Zhao didn't see the monster. Bei was very surprised and asked, what is a mirror barrier? Zhao replied that a mirror barrier is a type of protective barrier that has two dimensions in a single space. However, Bei still didn't understand anything. Zhao also suspected that someone wanted to hide something within the school walls. The smoke cleared, and Bei noticed that the dark aura was very similar to that of Teacher Chen. After that, our protagonist stood right in front of a huge scary monster. One head of the monster was thinking that Bei was strange, and the other two heads were saying affirmatively that there was no difference. He just had to be killed. But our protagonist couldn't be taken so easily. He had already swung his fist right towards the monster. He wanted to find out the details of the incident that happened to Yue Er. Just then, there was a massive explosion from Bei's punch. However, one of the monster's heads was able to grab his fist with its teeth. Bei said with a smirk on her face that it was a grave mistake to hold back his blow with her teeth. He immediately activated his serpent scale ability and rasped all of the monster's teeth. The monster was in a state of confusion, with one head telling him to run, the second head agonizing in terrible pain, and the third head saying he needed to kill Bei as soon as possible. After which the monster grabbed a huge tree trunk and with lightning speed swung at the guy. The punch was hard, but Bei blocked it. Bei then grabbed the lead as he didn't want to play the bring the stick game. He began to hack away at the tree trunk with great speed. After that, he shattered into several pieces. The monster couldn't believe that Bei wasn't really an ordinary person. The monster wanted to flee, but it was too late. Bei hit it from above with tremendous force. Zhao watched what was happening. He was surprised by the fact that Bei had started to evolve and change too quickly. Bei stood on the monster's head and thought he had overdone the force a little too much, since it showed no signs of life at all. The guy was a little frustrated since he hadn't gotten the information he needed yet. But it was only a ruse. Two heads grabbed Bei's legs. The monster had Bae by both legs and was preparing to straighten him out. The center head released a powerful stream of fire to finish off the protagonist. The fire flow was so powerful that it was able to illuminate the entire area in the neighborhood. But there was no limit to the monster's surprise. The monster saw Bei with a devilish thug. Bei was gloriously Spider-Man hanging in the air. He questioned the monster. What were they doing here and what was their plan? Monster couldn't believe that Bei understood them. It seemed impossible for them. One of the heads said that under no circumstances could anyone be allowed to know why they had come to this world. So they started running away as soon as possible. But Bei threatened the monster and said that if he didn't tell the truth, he'd get something worse than death. At this moment, a plan had formed in Xiao's mind. He wanted to seize the monster's body to break the spirit seal and get all his strength back. Talking to Bei, Zhao convinces him that he will deal with the creature himself since they are from the same tribe. In his words, he should teach that asshole a lesson. Zhao's plan was that he would greatly anger this huge monster whose body would become a suitable vessel for him. When Zhao came closer, the monster heads began to argue with each other. On the one hand, they were afraid of Zhao, but on the other hand, they wanted to fight him. The monster condemned Zhao for getting involved with a pathetic person. But he replied that there was no point in explaining anything to him since the monster's intelligence was too tiny. Bai was standing aside and picking his nose. He asked Zhao to stop ranting at that creepy monster and finally get all the information he needed out of him. The monster began to talk Zhao into not killing him, as he had only taken the form of a demon. With a formidable tone, Zhao replied that this was a matter they could discuss in his stomach when he devoured him. A roar sounded. The monster was not going to give up so easily, and promised to overpower Xiao by any means necessary. Xiao watched the monster get angry, as it was good for him. The angrier the monster got, the more likely Xiao would be able to take his body away. He was already looking forward to taking down BAE. After which, the monster attacked Xiao. The monster managed to grab Xiao with its jaws and swallow. BEI was immediately yanked by the chain. He couldn't believe that the monster had swallowed Xiao. The monster was jubilant that it had managed to swallow the wretched dog. They felt a tremendous surge of strength in their veins. Swinging his sword, Bai threatened the monster to spit Xiao out. Suddenly, sparks began to fly from the monster's body. None of the three heads could understand what was happening to them. Their bodies were no longer obeying them and they were losing control of them. What's going on is very alarming to Bai. At the same instant, a violent explosion sounded that threw Bai back a few meters. The guy couldn't understand what happened or why the monster suddenly exploded. The smoke gradually dispersed, and Xiao, holding his mouth, a small puppy, came out of the cloud of smoke. He immediately tossed the little puppy onto the pavement. Xiao was frustrated that this monster's body was too weak and couldn't handle all the demonic energy that needed to be absorbed. In short, the monster was weak. Bai was already thinking that Xiao was really dead, but Xiao only laughed in response. He immediately asked B to rather take this puppy's demonic energy. At that point, it was a second burst of energy for BAE. Looking at the puppy closer, BEI recognized it as the same puppy the school watchman had taken in. So be careful and don't take in just anyone off the street. The puppy in turn sat on the grass and begged with cute eyes to be let go. He was just running and accidentally got tangled in the dark energy. He didn't want to hurt anyone. Xiao didn't think to be ceremonious with him and immediately told him to show him where the girls were. The puppy took off and ran to show the way. Bai was the only one worried that they'd run into some kind of trap. For Xiao, it was another chance to be free. We go to the room where Yue and her friend were sitting. The friend thanked Yue for saving her. Yue replied that it was all her intuition. The friend was very scared. She thought they were going to die here. She also apologized to Yue for dragging her into this. But Yue calmed her down and told her that it was okay. Help would come for them soon. The girlfriend was very happy that someone would come for them and help them. Suddenly the doorknob clicked off. The girls were really freaked out. Yue even grabbed a broom to defend herself. But when the door opened, in the doorway stood Bi, Xiao, and the little puppy. Ba was very happy that he had finally found his mate. Yue's girlfriend immediately rushed at him. She idolized Bae for finally coming and saving them. Call him your hero. She promised him he could choose any of her exclusive photos. Bai Xiao was a little embarrassed by the code after seeing these pictures. Suddenly something cracked behind his back. It turned out that Yue had broken the broom she was holding. She asked the guy how long he was going to cuddle with her friend. He, in turn, made a serious face and said that they should get out of here as soon as possible. However, Xiao asked Bi if he wanted to find out who was behind it all. The boy was in agreement with Xiao. If they didn't do it now, they would never know. The guy looked at the girls and realized he couldn't let them get into danger again. Then he told the girls that he would help them get out of here, but they would not go any further with them. He needed to uncover the culprit. However, the girls did not agree with this decision. They wanted to go with Bae, and Xiao in turn was pleased with this outcome, since Bei had fallen for his ruse. From the school, we hear Xiao's instructions that he said he smells suspicious energy coming from the far room, and that's where they should head. After that, they gradually walked down the steep steps to the back of the school. Bi also asked Xiao if he was leading them correctly. Xiao told them that they were no longer in the school, but in a separate dimension that consisted of a mirror barrier. The boy was surprised by this answer. He didn't think it was possible to create new dimensions. He wanted to learn this skill as soon as possible. Yue's friend grabbed Bei's hand because she was very scared. Behind Bei stood Yue and glared at him threateningly. She also clutched at his arm, saying that it was very dark and scary in here. This confused Bei a bit, since this kind of behavior was not usual for Yue. Xiao was looking at all this. He turned to Bei and said, "If it's hard for him between two girls, then let him use his body to show him how to behave with girls." Suddenly raising their heads, they saw a bright light. It turned out to be a release of dark energy that confused our heroes. The release of energy startled Bei a little. The guy felt a great responsibility for the girls' integrity. The girls replied that they were fine. They had only inhaled dust and therefore coughed. Ba couldn't allow them to be put in danger, and he needed to think of something immediately. Suddenly an idea popped into his head. The idea was to just leave them in that spot and Bei would move on. But naturally, he won't just leave them. He created a big snake-like demon that was supposed to protect the girls. The demon was so beautiful that the girls were enchanted by him. Bi and Zhao set off telling the girls to wait for them. Bi wanted to say something to Zhao, but suddenly Zhao interrupted him and told the guy to stop making noise, something is coming. The guy braked his feet hard and said he too felt a powerful pulse of energy behind him. They stood outside the door and Bai was already excited that he would finally reveal the secret. The guy opened the door ajar and looked inside. He saw a strange place in the middle of which a man stood in the center. The man was standing right next to a ball of light. The man's silhouette seemed very familiar to Bai. Turns out it was the school principal on the phone. He was telling someone that the balloon was not stable and needed a little more time. The orb was like a source of dark energy. It also gave off an extremely strong smell of rot, so strong that Bai couldn't even breathe. The whole puzzle in Bai's mind came together. The headmaster was involved in all the incidents, and naturally Bai wouldn't let him continue to do anything bad. To Zhao, this energy in the ball seemed very strange. Bai wondered if Zhao was suggesting a retreat, in case they would never find this place again. The barrier is very strong. Zhao reassured him that he had managed to mark the area. Bai immediately jumped up from his seat and started running away. Zhao looked at the ball for a moment and thought that if that ball was really the thing he thought it was, they would be in trouble. Next, we hear the continuation of the director's conversation. The director in turn takes someone's order and says that the preparation of the sacred weapon will be completed as soon as possible. Whereupon he ended the phone call. It turned out that the director was no ordinary man, but he also had an evil demon inside him. He sensed Bai's presence, saying he was lucky not to run into him when he was angry. However, the director didn't understand why it was Bei who came. The case was getting more and more interesting. The next morning, Bei walked by Yue Er's house and didn't feel a drop of last night's energy. Did it all evaporate during this night? Out of nowhere, some rich kids from school were behind him. They were whispering like rats. Shen came out of their company and passing by Bei, asked him if he had found Yue Er. He replied that of course he had. Yue Er is now resting as the night was not easy. Lastly, Shen said that he took care of the comforter and also added that in public, Bei and Shen better keep their distance. After which he waved his hand and left. Bai turns to Zhao and says it's good to have such an ally. It's harder to keep track of everything alone. Zhao resented that if that was the case, why didn't he team up with Mu Shui? Turns out the guy doesn't like her character. On the way, Bei asked Zhao why he was always talking about Mu Shui. Was he in love with her? Naturally, Zhao contradicted such words. Suddenly, a hand was placed on our hero's shoulder by someone. The boy turned around with fear. It turned out to be the director who greeted Bai. The guy didn't plan for the principal to make the first move. Is he really up to something? As if nothing happened, Bei said hello to the principal. Zhao thought how Bei could be such an idiot. His enemy is standing right in front of him, and he's being a jerk at this time instead of attacking him directly in the forehead. But from Bai's words, he can't attack him in a crowded place like a school. The director turned to Bai, noticing the bags under his eyes. He asked what he had done last night. Bei was startled at such a question. Had the director really seen him? But there was no need to panic. So the only excuse Bai could come up with was that he'd been working on his homework all night to catch up on all the material he'd missed. After that, the guy bowed in front of the principal, saying that class would start soon and he had to hurry. He wanted to get away from the director as soon as possible. Zhao had called Bei a hopeless brat who only knew how to run away from problems. Bai tried to justify himself by saying that there would be many innocent casualties from a rash battle. Suddenly, the principal turned to the protagonist again and told him to come into his office. He had a couple of questions. This request confused the guy a bit. Was the principal really going to kill him in his office? Principal's office. The director started talking about how sorry he was for Bai. It must be hard for him to live alone with his disability. For the protagonist, the director's behavior was much more relaxed than he expected. If the director continues to play this game, Bai will play along. The principal folded his hands in front of him and recalled the incident with the gymnasium. Only thanks to Bai, lives had been saved. It's rare to find such brave people, said the principal. Such words of praise embarrassed Bai a little. He replied that anyone in his position would have done the same. The director realized that the protagonist was bluffing and simply wasting his time. The director finally said that he needed advice on an important issue, but the guy replied that he was not very competent in giving the right advice, but he would listen to the director very carefully. The director began to list all of Bai's accomplishments. He wondered how often one could meet such a person. Better even to say how such a person managed to do all of the above. Bei scratched his head and replied that if the director had something to say, then let him say it directly. There was no need to make a circus out of it. The director was already excited. Bei seemed like a worthy foe for him. Making a sly smile, the director added that Bei had seen everything last night. Zhao emphasized that the principal had cracked and needed to be done away with. Bei agreed, but he still needed to get him away from the school. The director was immediately enveloped in dark energy and told Bei that he could kill him right here and right now. Bei had also released power and was ready to strike back. However, the director emphasized that Bei was a strong opponent, and even if he couldn't defeat him, he would at least try to subdue him to do his assignments. The director will take care of Bei's enrollment in the university, will also add him a top scholarship and everything to fulfill his assignment. From his words, he could have just given him money, but he is a conscientious teacher. If you want to help a hungry man, give him a fish, not a fish, but a fishing rod. But if our protagonist refuses this offer, something bad will happen to him. Suddenly, the mug that was on the table flew into the air. The principal was already holding the mug and said that if he refused, Bei and Yahello would suffer the same fate as this mug. After which the headmaster demon crushed the mug with his hand. Bei replied indignantly that he couldn't be scared that easily, and scaring a girl was a death sentence. The director emphasized that he wasn't going to harm Yahello physically. He was just going to ruin her future life because she wouldn't go anywhere to study after school and would just be homeless. This kind of deceit made the protagonist even more angry. The main character's main enemy is director Bei, not the girl, and he shouldn't involve her in this game. With confidence in his eyes, Bei was ready to kill the principal right now. The principal couldn't believe that the brat turned down his offer. In preparation for the battle, Bei said that he would do only one thing for the director. He would simply arrange his funeral. After which the protagonist rushed at the principal, swinging his arm at him. But suddenly someone knocked on the door. Outside the door was Mushu. She said, "What?" bringing the weekly report of the student council. The energy-spewing principal allowed Mushu to enter. This hottie swung the door open and walked into the office. Bei clenched his teeth and didn't understand what Mushu was doing here. Zhao, of course, admired her beauty. Turning to Bei, the director said he could go, but was mindful of his offer. He asked to think it over again. As if nothing had happened, Bei agreed with him. Bei was heading towards the exit, and Mushu was just entering the office. As they passed one by one, the girl whispered that it wasn't time to attack. She added that Bei should wait for her at the school gate. Neither Bei nor Xiao understood what this girl wanted or what the hell she was up to. A few hours later in the schoolyard, Bei and Xiao stood on the sidewalk and were still waiting for Mushu. Since the girl definitely knew something about the principal, the guys couldn't leave and waited for her until the last minute. Suddenly, there was a powerful exhaust sound. A sports car drove up to Bei and Xiao, splashing them with water. It was a bunch of schoolyard bullies who were always picking on Bei. They made some stupid joke about Bei as usual. In the backseat sat Shen. He was not very pleased to hear this. The protagonist didn't know what to do and was thrown into a sweat. Zhao shouted at him and asked why he didn't beat the crap out of them, but Bei kept his composure. Then he opened one eye and asked what were those pesky mosquitoes buzzing under his ears. After that, he started as if catching insects from all directions. It was like a distraction. One of the brazen men thought Bei was out of his mind and asked him to be careful around his new car. Suddenly, Bei hit the roof of the new car, causing those insolent men to be incredibly shocked. The guy then showed the killed mosquito in the palm of his hand and said he was just killing mosquitoes. The insolents were just pissed off. Out of nowhere came another sports car. It turned out to be Mushu. She turned to Bei and told him to hurry up and jump into the car. Everyone around Bei's neighborhood dropped their mouths in surprise, and Bei said he was on his way. They were leaving, and all the other students who were present at that moment couldn't understand how Bei was so lucky. Only Shen felt not envy but jealousy. From his words, Mushu would not dare to take Bei away from him. The kids got his eye on the main character after all. Mushu took Bei to her house and told him he could make himself at home and she would be there in a minute. In the apartment, Bei felt awkward since it was the first time he was at another girl's house. The excitement almost made his heart jump out of his chest. However, Mushu's room seemed a little strange to him. He didn't think that the Cold Queen could have such a girly room. But the worst part was that she showered in front of Bei. Zhao hints to Bei that the girl probably wants to have some fun with him. Zhao will even try to provoke Bei for such an event. But the guy didn't know what that meant. Zhao was surrounded by toys and said that he could do whatever he wanted to do with Mushu After all, she herself wanted it too. Finally, the main character gets the hint. He was already visualizing in his head a picture of Mu Shui beckoning him with her beauty. But Bi realized that he urgently needed to calm down, and Zhao was only trying to create unnecessary problems for him. Whereupon he heard the door open behind his back. It was Mu Shui who had just come out of this bathroom. She suggested that Bei take a shower too, since he was sweating a lot. The guy refused, and Zhao was greatly disappointed with Bei. After which Mu Shui sat down on the sofa and began to tell why did she call Bei. She said that the daughter of the rich man she offered to work with was possessed by some dark energy. Accordingly, her father had tried every possible cure, but nothing had worked, and she had never regained consciousness. Then she added that she had seen Bei last night, but he was missing. She wondered what had happened and why he was at the principal's office this afternoon. Bei was very surprised that the girl was so attentive. Without waiting for Bei's response, she banged her cup on the table, spilling the coffee. She knew that old man was out of his mind. Every time a student went missing, the subject was hushed up. She'd been suspicious even then, but she couldn't find any leads. The main character couldn't believe she was investigating a dangerous case all by herself. Suddenly, Mu Shui received a phone call from someone. She picked up the phone and it was the rich man whose daughter was possessed by dark energy. The man told her that his daughter woke up, but suddenly jumped on people like a madwoman. They can't hold her back anymore. The girl hung up the phone and jumped up from the couch. She told Bei that he had to go because she had important things to do. However, Bei couldn't just leave her. He asked to be allowed to help her solve the case. After a while, we see a red Lamborghini speeding across the bridge. As they drove along, the girl asked Bei to hide his power because there were people from the Juman Bureau where they were going. But Bei had no idea who the Juman Bureau people were, and it was the first time he had heard of such a thing. The girl explained that this is a secret organization that exists from ancient times. The organization consists of the best hunters who are engaged in extermination of demons. There are two kinds of hunters, day hunters and night hunters. Mu Shui is in the second faction. Between the hunters, the only rule was to stick to their hunting regimen. Bei had no idea there were so many secrets in such a simple world. The girl said that for a reason, she wanted to warn Bei not to start a fight, or the Juman people would have their eyes on him. Bei didn't even know how he could help the girl then, if he had to hold back. He asked Zhao if he knew anything about this organization, to which he said that he had no idea as his rank did not allow him to pass into the human world. But the girl suddenly remembered that there was a crossover between day and night hunters after all. They had to defeat an incomparably powerful enemy, the celestial dog that had devoured the sun and moon. Then the day and night hunters joined forces. Bei looked at Zhao ironically and turned to Mu Shui. He didn't even know that such demons existed. Zhao embarrassedly replied that memory was not his strong suit. Still, Zhao remembered the day he fought Erlan on the edge of humanity. It seemed to him that someone from the Bureau was there after all. They were helping Erlan and making a little fun of Zhao himself. After a while, they pulled up to a luxurious house that caused Bei and Zhao to admire it. Bei became serious and asked Zhao if he could feel the energy this house emitted. It was a familiar smell to Zhao, but it was much stronger here. Near the entrance of the house lay many warriors who had failed in the rich man's problem. The people looked at Mu Shui and Bei, but no one still didn't understand why Mu Shui had come here if she was a hunter of the night. Mu Shui realized that the situation had taken the worst possible outcome. Even the day hunters couldn't cope. That rich man ran up to her and said he was very glad she had come. She calmed the man down and asked what happened here. The man replied that an evil spirit had possessed his daughter. After she came to her senses, she started attacking everyone. So the man called the people from Juman Bureau, but they can't handle it. From the crowd, someone said they had no choice but to seal her inside the room with spells. Mu Shui looked out the window and saw that the sun had not set yet. This meant that the night hunters were not allowed to use their powers. But the man kept begging Mu Shui for her to try to do something. After which the girl promised to save his daughter, no matter what. The girl entered the room, and even without using her magic, she would think of another way to escape. Walking into Mu Shui's room, she saw shadow on the floor. She looked up, and what she saw shocked her. There was a dark energy-possessed girl hanging from the ceiling. Her name was Zhao Shi. Zhao Shi recognized Mu Shui. Zhao Shi began to rapidly sink to the floor. The girl was very happy that Mu Shui had come because she had missed her so much. But suddenly, Zhao Shi launched an energy pulse at her. Thank God Mu Shui managed to dodge it. Mu Shui shouted out that she had come here to help. Mu Shui only had until sunset before she could use her magic. However, the possessed girl continued to attack. Mu Shui couldn't believe her eyes. Xiao Shi had turned into such a monster, but she promised to protect her no matter what. Xiao Shi admitted at this time that she had never felt so good. It was like she had been reborn. After which the possessed girl sank down on the bed and said that if Mu Shui wanted to help her, then she should lie down on the bed and not move. Xiao Shi confessed that she had always been in love with Mu Shui. She just couldn't bring herself to admit it. But today she wants her dream to come true. Mu Shui was shocked to hear this. Outside the room, the members of the Juman faction didn't understand how BEI had managed to hunt Mu Shui down. BEI didn't pay any attention to them. He was only concerned about the fact that Mu Shui didn't have any plan, but she still went to the room. He had a silly question for Xiao. The boy asked him if he had to swallow the sun to make it count as a sunset. Xiao replied that before he would have done it without blinking an eye, but now he didn't have the strength. Whereupon BEI stood up and turned around. The remaining crowd of day hunters laughed at BAE because of his girlfriend fighting inside the room while he waits outside doing nothing. Suddenly, Bei asked the hunters to scram if they weren't going to help. Then he shamed them, calling them losers who only talk and don't try to help. If he were their ancestor, he'd die of shame. The day hunters were very indignant at such words. Bei kept insisting that these assholes get the hell out of here. There was no limit to the outrage of these two guys. Suddenly, Mu Shui kicked the door with her body, thus trapping those guys. Apparently, the possessed girl threw her out of her room. Bi stood aside and told the guys that this was what he was talking about. The protagonist bounced off the floor. He was able to catch Mu Shui in midair, thus preventing her from getting hurt. They got into a very beautiful pose and Bei asked if Mu Shui was okay, to which she replied that he shouldn't have interfered. The protagonist replied that if the lady is in trouble, he can't stay away. Not properly appreciating Bei's help, the girl said she could have handled it herself. All the day hunters couldn't understand what had just happened and why they had picked up a trace of demonic power. Could this guy be a demon? Suddenly someone said hello to Mu Shui. It was one of Nunnan's strongest day hunters. He said that this was the time of the day hunters and she shouldn't be here. He kept saying that Mu Shui had already overstepped her bounds and should immediately leave this place. She should let the day hunter solve the problem. The smaller ranked day hunters were very excited about Nunnan's arrival. The girl at this moment didn't care at all what Nunnan was saying. Such behavior made him unspeakably angry. He said that as soon as the girl saw his strength, she would immediately bow down and lick his shoes. Nunnan looked at the protagonist with disapproval and said that such a weak young man shouldn't be around someone he doesn't deserve. Nunnan also added that Bei smells like dog. Accordingly, a good dog will not interfere with a person's passage. Bai stepped back, and Nunnan told his fellows that he would solve this problem in 5 seconds. He turned to them once more and told them that they could rely on him completely. After Nunnan stepped outside the threshold of the room, he was immediately attacked. Nunnan flew out of the room like a cork. However, Bei stopped the flying Nunnan with his strength. With a sneer, Bei turned to Nunnan saying that he shouldn't have overestimated himself like that. With a serious tone, Bei turned to the remaining hunters, telling them that if no one was going to do anything else, they should let him try it too. Naturally, none of them believed in Bei's power and only mocked him. The hero then turned to Uncle Yo, telling him that his only intention was to repay Mu Shui's debt. He would try his best to help. Mu Shui in turn told her uncle that Bei could be trusted since he had once saved her. Still, Uncle Eo agreed since Bei was the last hope of saving his daughter. Entering the room, Bei reassured his uncle. After all, he is a professional in such matters. Looking at Bei leaving, Mu Shui didn't understand why he was helping her. Was it love? Bei, along with Xiao, walked into the room. In front of them, they saw a possessed girl sniffing Mu Shui's jacket. Bei, on the other hand, didn't understand why the next possessed person was more perverted than the previous one. The girl shifted her attention to our heroes. As for her, they were just new toys that came to her to play. She jumped up from her seat and immediately rushed towards Bei. She hoped the boy wouldn't disappoint her. Bei stood at full strength, and since the girl wanted to have fun, he agrees to have fun. He looked at her with a look like he was devouring her from the inside out. Such a look naturally alerted the possessed girl. She started to slow down, after which she jumped back at Bae. She landed on her bed and thought something was wrong with this guy. He's different from the previous ones. She sensed danger. Afterwards, she asked the protagonist what they were going to play after all. Making an intimidating face, Bei suggested a game of catch-up sucking. Zhao looked at him funny at that moment. In Su Xiao's eyes, Bai looked very scary. He looked like a psycho. The girl thought about what Bei was going to do to her. Would he chain her to the bed and start having fun? Or perhaps he'll spank her with a whip? Or will it drip red-hot wax on her body? Terrified, the girl shouted that there was no way she was going to play such a game. Bei Min didn't even think anything of the sort. Zhao Yi Bai and stared at the screaming girl without even realizing what she had just imagined. Su Xiao lay on the bed and asked Bei not to approach her because she belonged to Mu Shui. The guy tried to calm her down by saying that it was just a misunderstanding between them. The main character said he wasn't a bad guy, he was just here to help. He asked the girl to be good and not run away. All he would do is absorb her dark energy and the girl would return to her normal state. These words did not calm Su Xiao down at all. She continued to be afraid of Bei. Out of fear, the girl called him a goddamn pervert. Bai was outraged that he was the one who was called a pervert out of everyone present. But Zhao said that it was a perfectly normal reaction. No woman would trust a weirdo. However, the guy looked at the girl and did not know what to do because she was no longer in demonic form, and accordingly, he could not raise his hand on the person who looked so scared. After thinking for a bit, Bei decided that first, he needed to awaken the body mistress's consciousness. They only had one option left. Zhao and Bei looked at each other. Little by little, Bai was getting closer to Su Xiao, thus scaring her even more. Bei tells her to calm down and everything will be fine, just she has to trust him. The girl was tormented by one obsessive question why she couldn't resist the protagonist. She felt like his aura was moralizing her. But she couldn't resist because her body was too weak. Covering her eyes with her hair, she screamed whatever Bai did to her, let him be very gentle. The protagonist and Zhao no longer had the energy to explain anything. They were determined to get down to business. We are transported to the hallway where the day hunters of Juman's organization were standing around, not understanding what was going on inside the room. I wonder if that boy is up to something bad. Even the girl's father started to speak ill of the protagonist, but Mu Shui stopped him by saying that Bei can be trusted. But even Mu Shui herself didn't understand what was going on inside the room and why such loud screams could be heard from inside the room. She hoped Bei hadn't used the very trick he tried on her. She thought back to their kiss. After a while, Bei and Zhao left the room. The guy said that Su Xiao was fine and anyone who wanted to help her could see for themselves. Her father immediately ran into the room. At this time, Su Xiao was lying on her bed, but her shoes had been removed. Opening her eyes a little, she saw her father. They started hugging each other, and the girl said she was very scared. She had a terrible nightmare in which she thought that some demon was tickling her feet, but her father calmed her down, saying it was just a dream. Behind Mu Shui's back, the day hunters stood behind her and laughed at her as Bei appeared to be much stronger than her. At this time, Bei and Zhao wanted to leave, but someone stopped them. It was Mu Shui asking Bei to explain. How exactly did he rid Su Xiao of the evil energy, and why were her clothes so shabby? Bei excitedly replied that she had gotten it all wrong, and there was no way he would allow himself to do such a thing. Still, he told her that he had cured the poor girl by tickling her. He explained that he tickled the girl until she started convulsing. It induced consciousness, and then he sucked all the dark energy out of her. The girl stood in a stupor as she couldn't even think that such a method existed. Bei tried to leave again, but this time he was stopped by the rescued girl's father. Uncle Eo said that he couldn't just walk away since he had saved his daughter. The man also asked if the protagonist wanted a reward. Bei was a little confused. What was the reward? He didn't even think that money could be earned in this way. The man solemnly introduced himself and said he was very rich and could give Bei any reward. The crowd around Bei began to discuss the events taking place. At this point, Bei hesitated as he didn't know what kind of reward was appropriate for his work. He felt that he shouldn't be greedy and ask for too much, but he couldn't ask for too little either, or everyone else would look down on him. Bei came to the conclusion that 1,000 yen would be enough. He can buy another cheap pair of Jordans with it. Parr decided to name this amount to the gentleman. Mr. Ao was shocked at the words he heard. The guy could have asked for his entire fortune, but he only asked for 1,000 yuan. Bei was really very kind. The hero was a little embarrassed. He thought he had said something wrong. However, the man approached Bei and said it was too little and he would pay him 10 million. Bei was shocked to hear that. Those present in the room immediately began to discuss such a statement, calling Bei a sly sneak. Bei in turn got excited and was already imagining how many pairs of sneakers he would be able to buy. Mu Shui also said her word. She too promised Bei that she would fulfill any of his requests. Such words shocked Bei, and the people around him immediately began to envy the guy. Zhao turned to Bei and said that such a chance is very rare, he should seize the moment. Zhao added that Bei needs to lose his virginity and become a real man. Zhao had already imagined Mu Xie wearing a housekeeper's robe. Zhao's behavior had made Bei more than a little angry, whereupon Bei was stopped by someone telling him to stand still. It was Nun Nan who said that Bei wouldn't get away with it today. The bully promised to kill him. Bei told them to spend their energy on fighting, not on pointlessly trying to kill him. Zhao, in turn, suggested that they just eat them. Suddenly, Mr. Yo said that Bei is an honored guest. If anyone touches him, Mr. Yo will become their enemy accordingly. Such words caused Nun Nan to feel great hatred. After which Mr. Eo added that there was no need for sororities, and he would reward everyone in this room for their bravery. Naturally, no one argued with him, and a bunch of losers started to leave. At the end of the day, Nun Nan walked up to Bei. With a frightened expression on his face, he began to say that the protagonist was just lucky to have the right person on his side this time. And if this keeps up, Bei will be hunted down. After which, Nun Nan accidentally bumped his hand against Bei's shoulder. Turns out the thug's humerus was broken in half. Bei asked him, "Did something happen?" But he never heard an answer. The protagonist stood and hoped that after all this talk, he would finally be able to leave. However, Mr. Yo offered him dinner. Suddenly, the guy caught some kind of object. They turned out to be car keys. They were thrown at him by Mu Shui. She said that he could take her car since she was staying here today to be with Su Xiao. Bei gave the keys back and said not to worry about him, especially since he had a meeting scheduled with someone. He said goodbye to everyone, and he told Mu Shui that they would see each other tomorrow at school. Mu Shui was perplexed that Bei had rejected her proposal again. A taxicab pulled up to the luxurious house whose driver was pushing Bei around. They were rushing down the road, and Zhao asked Bei how could he give up a fancy car in exchange for this Volkswagen. The guy yelled at him and said that if he didn't like him, he could run after the car. Zhao apologized and said he had no more complaints. Zhao then remarked that Bei was a very lucky guy. Zhao wondered how long it would last. Bei replied that before the accident, that may have been the case, but after the accident, life has taught him not to be too optimistic. Suddenly, Zhao remembers about Yue. She was still kind of sick. Bei remembers that this is true, and they should go see her soon. He asked the driver of the car to take him to another location. They arrived at the house where Yue lived. Bei knocked on the girl's front door, but no one opened the door. He was alarmed that no one opened the door. Naturally, he thought she had fallen asleep, but Zhao suddenly asked Bei if he could smell anything strange. Bei was panicked as he smelled the faint, but still evil energy. They quickly entered the room and saw small streams of energy. Bei stepped closer and wondered why there was dark energy in her body. Had she gotten infected in that basement? Zhao reassured the guy, saying that the energy hadn't penetrated her subconscious yet because of the cold. Bei touched Yue's forehead. He was trying to suck the evil energy out of her, but the girl grabbed him, and she brought his hand to her cheek. Bei was very pleased. She was acting like a child, but it had to be sorted out soon. Bei began the process of sucking out the evil energy and claimed that Yue would be fine. She didn't get any better, however. Suddenly, the girl was covered in cold sweat. Bei is pissed off because he can't do anything at all. But suddenly, it was like the girl woke up and saw Bei and asked when he had time to get a husky. These words shocked both the protagonist and Zhao. Bei couldn't believe that Yue could see Xiao. The girl herself at this point continued to sleep with no foreshadowing of trouble. Zhao didn't understand. What the hell is a husky? That was followed by some sort of joke. There is an example of this joke in the picture, but it was all in Chinese and I didn't understand anything at all. I think the essence of this joke is not so important. The protagonist yelled at Zhao, asking him not to joke around like that anymore. They're actually talking about serious stuff here since Yue said she saw Zhao. Zhao rejected this option because he, in his original spiritual form, could only be seen by gods or powerful demons, and she was an ordinary person. Bai hoped that Yue was just delusional, as he didn't want to drag her into his problems. However, Zhao was uneasy at the thought that the girl could see him after all. Suddenly, he heard an odor. Then he began to address someone and order them to show themselves. Apparently, there was someone else in the room besides our protagonist. Bai leapt up from the bed and was startled by the fact that there was some kind of demon present in Yue's room. An evil dark aura began to creep across Yue's bed. Dark aura carried herself over to the wall, saying that she had been spotted after all. The demon's silhouette on the wall praised Zhao for his sense of smell. He really deserved to be called Erlin's dog. but BEI was embarrassed that this silhouette could see Zhao. Zhao confirmed that it's a very powerful being. It doesn't stink of demonic energy, but instead smells of scorching spiritual energy. The silhouette on the wall began to cheer. Then the creature confessed that it was the god of fire. Zhao recognized it as the sixth heavenly fire god. He immediately wondered how such a god had come to the human world. BI expressed his recognition of this god as he was able to scare even Xiao. Of course, Xiao denied it, but the fact remains. Whereupon Bei decided to bring out the so-called god of fire. If that one is really a fire god, he must have great spiritual power. But why don't they feel anything? Zhao confirmed it too. During the conversation, Zhao told a story in which, once, the fire god almost burned all of Zhao's hair. Now he was left traumatized because of that. If it wasn't for that incident, he would have never been scared. BAE kept throwing around evidence to bring the so-called god of fire to light. The creature slowly began to move away from the wall. Bei knew it was just an illusion. Then he said that the real body of that god is this candlestick. More precisely, not the candlestick itself, but the flame inside it. The clever hero narrated that when he used the heat vision of the spirit serpent, he did not see the fire in front of him. Everyone in the room had body temperature, and the only other heat came from the flame in the candlestick. That's why this little flame is the intimidating fire god that scared Xiao. Xiao praised Bi, calling him a good detective. Bai laughed at Zhao for his cowardice, and it made Zhao angry. Suddenly, Zhao started shouting at this little fire god, saying that he had already suffered from the fire god's flames once before. He was ordering him to show his true form, or else he would devour him. Flame obeyed and began the process of reincarnation. Suddenly, a very cute light appeared in front of them, asking for Zhao's forgiveness. Bi and Zhao looked at the little cutie. Bi wondered what he was doing in Yue Er's room, but suddenly the little cutie called Bei a nasty bastard and asked him to move away. Little Flame started acting out and saying that Bae was the reason Yue Er was always in trouble. That's why he hated him. Zhao vowed to eat Little Flame if he didn't tell the truth. Little Flame said that he used to be the sixth heavenly god of fire, but he wanted to come down to the human world out of curiosity. Of course, most of his powers were gone during the transition between dimensions, so he became Little Flame. Ba told him that since he wasn't a demon, he shouldn't drag Yue Er into this, but the flame was dissenting from this decision. Ba prepared to deal with the Little Flame, but the flame said that if he left, the girl would die. The protagonist was shocked at these words. Oganyok explained that when a person is born, he has three flames. If the fire weakens or fades, the child can be possessed by evil energy. At birth, Yue Er lacked a single flame. If he hadn't stayed around to serve as a replacement, she would have been devoured by demons long ago. It was only because of that small flame that the demons did not take possession of the girl's body. Bei was beginning to believe what he was saying. The boy remembered that in childhood the girl was weak and often sick. She spent at least half of every month in the hospital. However, at the age of 10, it was as if she was reborn. Not only did Yue Er not get sick, but her strength surpassed almost all the boys. Lightning said it's all thanks to him. However, Zhao mocked him, saying that if he didn't find a man, he would disappear completely. Bi thanked the Flamer for saving Yue Er. Even though Bei flattered the fire, he still hates the protagonist. But Bei didn't care. He wanted to ask that light to ask for help. The next morning came. Bei settled in the middle of the room on a chair and slept peacefully. Through the dream, he heard someone calling him. It was Yue Er who was whispering something in his ear, after which she grabbed his cheeks and stretched them. The girl insisted that the protagonist wake up. The guy opened his eyes because he was in so much pain. He asked Yue Er if there was any other way she could wake him up. The girl replied that it was the only method, since the guy wouldn't get up any other way. After which Yue Er asked what was he even doing in her room. Was he doing something dirty? But then she laughed and reassured Bae by telling him that she had already found out from her parents that he had stayed because he was very worried about her health. After which she called him to breakfast. Yue Er annoyed Xiao because of the noise she was making. Then Ba looked at the candle holder where Flame was and noticed that Yue Er was feeling much better today. That meant that Oganyok had done his best to heal the girl. Then Zhao said it's good that Yue Er recovered, so she can help Ba save people now. But the guy replied that he didn't want to put Yue Er in any more danger. Zhao made a skeptical expression and said that Bei just fell in love with her. After saying that, Bei was ready to beat up Zhao. Before long, Bei and Yue Er arrived at the school. Someone called out to Bei and he turned around. Someone was hurrying toward him. It was Yue Er's friend, whose name was Mao Chan. She immediately started hugging Bi. The guy felt a little awkward since everyone was looking at them, and most importantly, they had Yue Er breathing down their backs. Yue Er started yelling at her friend, telling her to let the guy go. Miao Chan just smiled and said it was just a joke. That didn't stop her from pulling a picture out of her jacket to give to Bei. She handed it to the guy and said her cell phone number was on the back of the picture. Yue Er started to chase her friend away, and Bai Yixiao started looking at the pictures. What he saw made the boy break out in a cold sweat. He couldn't believe that Miao Chan had given him her intimate photos. Suddenly, all the surrounding guys began to emit a killer aura. They were very jealous of Bei because he was attracting the attention of more and more girls. Bai put the picture in his pocket and started to leave. Xiao supported his intentions, but as soon as he took a step, something really scared him and Zhao. In the sky above the school was the mirror image of the royal barrier. It was the same phenomenon that happened the day BAE declassified the principal. Zhao raised his head up and said that this barrier is too close, the school might get hurt. Bei couldn't just stand by and do something. He had to do something. Zhao was ready for more of the show. Zhao never left the opportunity to get his hands on Bei's body. In order to build a good plan, he even read a book called Cultivation Methods from Masters. The book said that to keep things under control, all you need to do is keep the human heart under control. Bei asked Zhao, did he fall asleep? Why is he frozen in place? Zhao followed Bei with guile and said that just a little more and he could get what he wanted. Zhao already felt that things were about to change. Bei sensed something. He even clutched at his heart as it suddenly stabbed. Bei, along with Zhao, were on their way to the principal's office. BAE explains that they're here to find out what the principal is up to. The boy is willing to play along for a while until he gets tired of it. Zhao was alarmed by the fact that Bei looked very calm. He needed to finish that book as soon as possible to get a better understanding of people. Afterward, Bei walked to the principal's office and knocked. The protagonist used his supervision to see if anyone was inside, but there was no one there. It was a little strange that the principal wasn't in his seat at lunchtime. The guy turned to Zhao and asked if he could find the basement they went to last time. Suddenly, Zhao was already looking at Bei through his perspective. It was like some sort of choice game. The first three options appeared to him. Option 1, the answer is already obvious. Option 2, agree with it. Option 3, ignore it. Apparently, Zhao chose option 2. However, nothing happened, and Bei looked at Zhao as if he was mentally retarded. Zhao decided to replay the game. This time, he chose the ignore option. Bei then took it as if Zhao was asking him to look for more information. Bei was a little confused as he felt that Zhao was just trying to trap him. Zhao's voiceover said that he didn't choose anything, so why did Bei react? After that, they were already in the principal's office. Bei began to ponder that it would be foolish of the director to leave something important in his office. Back we hear the voiceover of Zhao, who is already annoyed by this out-of-control game. The options window popped up in front of him again. Now he chose the option of show off to the protagonist. After that, they got a new item. It was a picture of the principal along with his daughter. Bei looked at this picture and praised Zhao for finding it. The protagonist stared intently at the photograph. Zhao already ran out of patience and chose the last option of bite the main character. Eventually, the game broke down. Bei was unplayable in any way. Zhao was very tired and couldn't earn the trust of the protagonist. Bei turned to Zhao and asked what was wrong with him. He replied that he just wanted to be alone. Suddenly, Bei's gaze snapped to something. On the back of the photo was a caption in which the director addressed his daughter, promising to restore her sight. The information was of no use to the protagonist at all. He still didn't understand the director's intentions. Suddenly, an earthquake started. Bei remembered that the same level of vibration was there in the exam, but it was much stronger now. He ran to the window to see what was going on outside. When he looked out the window, he saw that dark energy spreading across the school campus. If they don't stop it, the dark energy will consume all the students. He was filled with rage because he didn't know what the principal was up to. They immediately rushed towards the exit, and Bei asked Zhao to quickly escort him to the basement since they needed to stop the principal. Suddenly, he heard announcements from the school's radio station. It told all students not to panic and to go outside. But Bei knew that if they went outside, the dark energy would be absorbed into them, and that would mean death. Then he headed for the radio room to tell no one to leave the room. Someone's screams could be heard coming from the radio room. There was a teacher and 2 other people in the room. The teacher blamed the principal that as soon as a problem starts, he is never there. The teacher ordered the men to quickly turn on the microphone. He has another message to deliver. But suddenly BEI came into the room and said that he wouldn't be in such a hurry. The teacher was surprised at his presence and ordered him to go outside with the others. However, Bei was determined. He asked to be heard. The protagonist starts saying that right now the dark energy they're seeing is spreading across campus. Its power can turn a man into a monster. Accordingly, they should make sure that all the students stayed in their classrooms and all the windows were closed tightly. The teacher didn't understand what the kid was saying. He immediately began to suspect him of something. But Bei said he came here in good faith. All the people in the room supported the teacher that BAE was up to something. Zhao reassured BEI by saying it was unlikely they would listen to him. He explained that people only believe what they see and get angry at what they don't understand. They shouldn't waste their time explaining things. Bei needs to take the microphone himself and get the message across. BAE replied that he was not an authority to the students and no one would listen to him. Therefore, it is the teacher who must deliver the message. The crowd continued to stare suspiciously at BAE. There was nothing left for Bei to do, and LN went for a radical move. Zhao asked what was he up to? The guy decided to reveal all the cards and show his true colors. BA appeared before them in his demonic form. No one around, including the teacher, could understand what was going on. They wondered why the Bai was giving off a predatory aura. They were facing a different handicapped man than the one they knew. Bai repeated that the situation was too critical, so he didn't have time to explain. He raised his hand and began to concentrate a charge of energy, whereupon he released it into the wall of the broadcasting office. The teacher was very frightened by the explosion. Now he didn't know who BIE really was. The guy said it wasn't an explosion. He showed the teacher a perfectly made hole in the wall. The protagonist explained that he kept everything under control, including the charge level. He also added that he had something to tell him. The teacher asked what? He said he is not a simple man. He can do things that other people can't. Everyone was startled by these words. Some of the people in the room thought that BEI was a terrorist. Xiao's implication was that these people were hopeless and they were only wasting time. Some of the men wanted to call the police, but the teacher told everyone to shut up. BEI wouldn't just show off his power like that. The teacher thought BEI was about to take revenge on him for all the bad things he'd done to him. He saw Bei as a danger and didn't want to die. Bei tried again to explain everything, but the principal was so frightened that he had already begun to apologize for all that he had done to him. However, in order to distract the teacher in some way, BEI bowed to him. The teacher couldn't believe his eyes. BEI clarified that maybe the teacher doesn't get the point, but he's willing to swear he doesn't want revenge. But the master still couldn't calm down. The men were standing behind him, telling the teacher not to trust the words of this madman in any way. Gritting his teeth, the teacher gathered his wits and grabbed the microphone to make an announcement. BA listened to what the teacher was saying and realized that he had succeeded in changing his mind. The teacher shouted into the microphone for everyone to return to their classrooms, shut the windows tightly, and wait for the next instructions. A crowd of students heard the announcement and began to return to their classrooms. Zhao looked out the window to see if everything was going according to plan. Then he pleased Bei by telling him that it worked. The students are going back to their seats. Bei was very happy about this news and thanked the teacher for his help. The teacher replied that he actually trusted his intuition rather than the protagonist. Then he shouted and pointed his finger at the door and said that BIE needed to hurry up. BI obeyed him and was already moving towards the exit with Zhao. The protagonists made their way to the basement descent very quickly. Bai praised Zhao for being able to get him here. Right in front of them, they saw the entrance to the basement. Not having gone in there yet, BEI started trying to negotiate with the director from the get-go. But still, when they entered the basement, they saw the director lying on the floor with no signs of life. Zhao realized what had happened after all. Apparently, the principal had moved the seal, but couldn't handle its power. BA lifted the director off the floor. He wanted to get him out of here as soon as possible. After that, he would deal with the dark energy. Zhao said it's not that simple. BEI probably doesn't realize the full power of this sphere either. Bai didn't listen to him and immediately grabbed the sphere, thus causing Zhao to become furious. Out of desperation, Zhao grabbed BEI by his jacket and started pushing him away from the sphere. Suddenly, BA was very frightened himself. The sphere began to emit a very powerful stream of energy. Zhao continued to pull BEI away from her, saying that if he pulled him away a little later, there wouldn't be a wet spot left of him. BA then looked at his charred hands. I guess he really had been in a hurry. Bei began to panic as he didn't know what they should do. Zhao offered to give him his body. Zhao's spirit was much stronger and could absorb everything in a matter of seconds. Zhao's plan is finally coming to fruition. Out of desperation, Bei agreed. Zhao was jubilant that Bei had fallen into his trap. This time, he wouldn't make the same mistakes he had made the previous time. Suddenly, the principal was behind Bei's back. He took him by the head and asked him what he was whispering. The protagonist did not expect this turn of events. The principal grabbed him by the head and said he wouldn't be offended if he didn't want to join him. After saying those words, he threw the main character to the side with incredible force. The guy flew right into the wall, and the principal stood firm. He would not let Bei go against him. The smoke gradually cleared. Bei decided to attack the principal as well, throwing a few stones at him. The stones were approaching the headmaster at a very high speed. But it was in vain. The director used his strength and fought off the attack. He wondered if this was all that the protagonist could do. He was sorely disappointed that he would have to fight such a worthless weakling. In the blink of an eye, Bei jumped straight to the principal to dispel his beliefs. He was determined to fight the principal. He gave him the hardest blow to his chest. The blow was so strong that the director almost spit out his insides. The protagonist was able to break through the director's armor with incredible ease. At the time of the hit, the guy managed to condemn the principal, saying that he was unworthy of being principal because he was completely unconcerned about the safety of the school. What was that all about, and for what? The impact sent the director flying back several dozen meters. He managed to grab his hands on the ground to stop himself from moving. He also made it clear that Bei should know why he was doing all this. Naturally, the guy understood, but the only thing he couldn't understand was how the principal was willing to risk the entire school for the sake of one person. The principal replied that Bei would have done the same thing in his place. He would have saved the person he loved. So he won't let himself get in the way. It's not for nothing that he spent 10 years on this. In case anyone forgot, it's all for the director's daughter. She's blind. Bei and Zhao listened to the principal, and Zhao at the same moment asked Bei to give him the body faster. But the protagonist was interested in something else entirely. He wanted to know who was behind all this before he gave up his body. Bei's behavior made Zhao more than a little angry. The protagonist approached the sphere and told the director that he could have gone to better doctors after all. Why did he have to mess with dark energy? The principal replied that, "Can a bad thing be that strong?" Then the director told the protagonist that in front of him is the eye of the serpent spirit. Bai couldn't believe such words. Until today, it had been impossible. Then Zhao remembered Zhao Hua telling him that the serpent spirit eyes had been hidden from people a long time ago, but he couldn't even think one of them was in the school. The director admitted that this whole story started 10 years ago. That's when he joined the secret institution. He agreed to become a lab rat. The director looked at his hands and realized that they were covered in blood up to his elbows, and unfortunately the eye still hadn't been cleansed. But suddenly he turned toward the protagonist and said that this is no reason to be merciful. The principal explained to the protagonist that he needed to know the reason for his death, so he just told him everything. The director clarified that perhaps a soul as unusual as the protagonist could saturate the great eye. The director gave Bei a choice. He could die voluntarily and no one would be harmed, or he could fight on, but the outcome would be unknown. Zhao couldn't believe that the protagonist was just being silent. Was he really willing to die? Zhao insisted that Bei give him his body and he would do everything for him. The guy was in a state of confusion. He didn't know what to do. The next thing we see is the exit from the classrooms. The children disobeyed the teacher's orders and ran out of the school. They weren't going to sit in school at the teacher's behest. Their excuse was the fact that everyone knows that you can't stay indoors during an earthquake, which is to be expected. The dark energy has begun to take over the students. One student tried to bring the trespassers back to school, but it was too late. The dark energy had taken over their bodies. There was no saving them. Then the infected students started attacking the healthy kids, thus energizing them. The remaining students began to panic and scatter to their classrooms. Yue didn't know anything at all, so ran out to the landing where she heard strange sounds. She told her friend to go to a safe place as soon as possible, and she would come back soon. However, her friend was not going to leave Yue alone. The girlfriend clutched onto Yue's sleeve, and they ran against the crowd together. While Yue was trying to help the injured classmates, her girlfriend started getting mocked by infected guys. Without thinking long, Yue punched one of the attackers in the nose. However, her punch was too weak to harm those bastards. The guys were already ready to mock them both. One of the guys scares them that if they're naughty girls, they'll get tough. Yue then turned to her friend and told her to listen to her instructions carefully. When she counted to 1, the friend should run to the classroom as fast as she could. The girl started counting while trying to fight off the guys. She said 3 and kicked one guy in the leg. She said 2 and elbowed the other guy in the stomach. She said 1 and hit the third guy with her foot between the dogs. After that, her friend started running. The infected guys screamed and ordered the others to make sure no one let the prey escape. After which they rushed towards Yahello. Yahello was determined to fight them. But suddenly all of the guys were defeated by the broomstick of the newly arrived Manhwa. Yahello recognized the girl. Manhwa stopped twirling the broom and said that she needed to clear this place of this rabble as soon as possible. Manhwa turned around and started walking out towards the light. Yahello at this time was admiring how cool Manhwa was. But there was one but. Yahello was annoyed by the fact that Manhwa was very close to Bei. Manhwa turned around and asked if by any chance Yahello had Bei's phone number. She answered that there is, but it's of little use because there is no signal anyway. Manhwa asked Yahello to get out of this place as soon as possible as it was very dangerous. But the girl wasn't going anywhere and asked to stay. Manhwa agreed with Yahello's choice and added that she would not interfere when she was dying. At this time, a huge crowd of demonic monsters were already advancing on them. Manhwa didn't think the situation was as critical as she expected. In her words, Bei was very good at persuading the teacher to tell all the students to go to their classrooms. The girls were ready to take the fight. At that very second, they began to attack. It turned out that Zhao could watch the two girls working hand in hand. He found it very amusing. Bei asked what he was thinking, but all he could do was deny it. The director was in bad shape at this time. Apparently, he was in a lot of pain. At this point, Bei decided on an answer. The director offered him 2 options and he chooses both. To such a statement, the principal told the protagonist not to be so presumptuous. His great strength was of no consequence to him. At this time, the director's demon was preparing to stab Bei with his sword. However, the protagonist was able to disarm the principal's essence with a single blow, thus shattering the sword into many shards. One of the shards embedded itself in the wall in proximity to the principal. Afterward, the hero said that he just didn't want true evil to be cowardly. The principal was furious he didn't understand. Why would such a scum have such a powerful force? Suddenly, the principal pulled out a syringe and began injecting some green liquid into his neck. This allowed him to grab onto the energy sphere without any harm to himself. Bei tried with all his might to stop the principal. Zhao started yelling for Bei to stop the principal because he was about to absorb the demonic spirit and self-destruct. It was very important for Zhao not to let this happen. If the principal absorbed all the energy, then Zhao was doomed. The director was not going to back down and wanted to execute the plan he had conceived. There were some demons standing over the principal. The principal was like the butcher, ready to slaughter everyone. He ordered the demons who were near him to attack Bei and kill him. Zhao was very surprised that the headmaster was able to absorb the spirit power and still be alive. What did he inject himself with that syringe? However, Bei didn't care. He was determined to defeat the principal. The boy looked at the approaching demons and was ready to repel their attack. Like lightning, he destroyed all the demons with a single strike. But another demon appeared out of nowhere and struck at Bei. Suddenly, another demon started attacking the protagonist. The guy realized they weren't trying to kill him. They just wanted to hold him up. At this time, the protagonist heard a violent explosion. Turns out the principal caused the explosion. He had made a very large hole in the ceiling to get out. The villain wanted to leave quickly and return to the realization of his original plan. He didn't want to waste any more time on the protagonist. After all, he is not his main target. The obsessed headmaster rushed for the exit. He judged Bei for being able to save everyone, but he'd made his choice. The protagonist tried to stop him verbally. If the headmaster put Snake Eye down, something very scary would happen. From nowhere near the protagonist stood all the same demons who tried to harm him. He wanted to deal with them quickly, and so he reached for his sword. In an instant, all the demons were shattered, after which our chief jumped up and rushed towards the exit, pulling Zhao behind him. But Zhao was very upset for some reason. The atmosphere outside wasn't the best either. Many possessed school children were lying unconscious on the floor. Yahello looked very tired since she had been fighting for more than an hour. She gasped and couldn't believe it was all she could do. The knuckles on this hand are already completely knocked off. Seeing her condition, Manhwa said that the girl could leave. She would try to go on her own from here. But Yahello couldn't give up so easily. She couldn't let her distance from Bei continue. She wanted to prove to him that she could do big things. So she took all her will in her fist and brought herself to her senses. Suddenly, her fist lit up with an orange flame. The fire enveloped her from head to toe. She didn't understand what had happened to her. Why did she feel such immense power? Such power allowed her to destroy possessed school children with a single swing. Mu Shui watched what was happening and was simply shocked. She didn't understand how Yue Er could have such strength. Yue Er concentrated a large amount of energy in her fist. Apparently, she was preparing for a very serious attack. Instantly, she made a strike, destroying, in the process, an oodles of school children. Mu Shui realized that this was no ordinary fire. It burns evil spirits. Mu Shui didn't understand how this fire appeared in Yue Er. After all, she is an ordinary person with a pure heart. The principal had already climbed out of the basement and was standing on the roof of the school. He noticed the heat that Yue Er was emitting and headed toward her. However, the energy pulses that BEI had created were being directed towards him. The director could only look back and see what was coming at him. He was instantly attacked by energy pulses that sealed him into the wall of the school. That's when Bei came running over to the girls. He turned to the fire that was currently controlling Yue Er's body. He appeared from behind her shoulder and said that if it wasn't for him, Yue Er might not be alive anymore. From helplessness, the girl fell into the arms of the protagonist. From what Mu Shui saw, she felt a sense of jealousy. He held Yue Er in his arms and wanted to ask Mu Shui something. Suddenly, there was a loud scream from the director that caught the attention of our heroes. We see that the snake's eye has split open. In the voiceover, the director asked something to keep away from him. Zhao couldn't believe it. Could it be that what they feared had happened? The eye of the serpent spirit awakened. Bia felt a lot of dark energy in this thing. He asked Xiao if it was the eye of a snake spirit. He replied that technically it belonged to a serpent spirit. The eye had been taken from its owner, and that was why it was so evil. The eye came closer and closer to the principal. The principal screamed in pain as hard as he could, and the eye parasitized his body at lightning speed. Gritting his teeth, BEI couldn't let the two villains merge into one. He asked Mu Shui to help him take Yue Er to the safe place. Mu Shui warned BEI that he didn't even realize how strong the opponent before him was. The guy replied that he didn't need any help in the battle against the headmaster. All the help he needed was to get SE Er to safety. Out of desperation, the girl cried. Mu Shui agreed to take Yue Er to the safe place and was already heading towards the exit. She was very angry that Bei wouldn't listen to her. The principal continued to take on a new appearance and suddenly looked toward the departing girls. Bei noticed this. In order to avoid any risks, he instantly cut off all the snakes that were heading towards the girls. He noticed from the sidelines that he had failed to kill one snake after all. Snake sent a large energy pulse towards the girls. However, the teacher appeared out of nowhere and covered the girls with his body, taking the entire blow on himself. Blood began to flow from the headmaster's mouth. He couldn't allow his students to be injured, so he sacrificed himself. Instantly, the snake that survived was killed. BA picked up the principal's body and held him so he wouldn't die before his time. The teacher was already giving his deathbed speech. He asked BAE not to abandon the girls and to promise him that he would save everyone. Suddenly, some kind of pill was heading in their direction. She was dumped by Mu Shui. The girl said to give the pill to the teacher immediately. She could keep him alive until the ambulance arrived. The principal was in a desperate situation. He realized that the teacher needed to go to the hospital, but he couldn't leave the principal in the eye unattended. Suddenly, someone called out to BAE. It was Shen along with his frightened school friends. Shen came to help because he considered BEI his ally. He couldn't just abandon him. Even though he wasn't very strong in the fight against demons, he could help with something else. BEI asked Shen to take the teacher to the hospital. After that, Shen didn't hesitate long to order his friends to go and get the teacher off the floor. But they were too damn scared of the monsters that were still in the building. This behavior made Shen very angry. He promised to pay $1 million to each of his friends for helping him. Such an offer made them hesitate, but eventually they agreed. They immediately ran over to the teacher and tried to lift him off the floor. They had to be very careful not to make the wound deeper. One of the friends was already dictating his bank card number to Shen. Zhao Yibai watched all of this. They were struck by the fact that some people were only obsessed with money, which was just disgusting. Suddenly, someone started applauding. The creature said the situation was like some kind of circus. It was the principal who merged with the serpent spirit eye and took his new form. Zhao shouted out that the snake spirit had taken possession of the principal's body and became even stronger. Director looked at BAE and wondered why he was so strong. The boy in turn kept his gaze on him. After that, the principal noticed Zhao near BEI and called him a flea dog. Such words really offended Zhao, and he tried to shut the principal's mouth. But the director replied that he wasn't interested in talking to him at all. This behavior made Zhao even more angry. He was ready to tear the principal apart. B prepared himself for a fight. He wouldn't allow Xiao to be spoken of like that. The protagonist swung his sword with all his might, leaving behind a huge mark. However, there was no use for the punch. The principal was able to stop it with 2 fingers. The director continued to hold back Bei's onslaught and said that he wasn't interested in Xiao at all. It was our protagonist in his world that interested him. Bi didn't understand. In what way would the director be interested in his world? Xiao also couldn't believe that the principal could see the world of the protagonist. By all accounts, it was inevitable. Then the director suggested that maybe Bae is a demigod. The hero didn't want to listen to anything and swung his sword once more. However, the demon banishment sword was powerless against the principal's new appearance. The headmaster explained that the hero was trying to kill God with the demon banishment sword. How could anyone be dumb enough not to realize that? Ba realized that the director was reading his mind, after which the principal punched the protagonist in the stomach. During the strike, he told the main character that he shouldn't have been born. The blow was so strong that my energy pooled in Bae. The main character flew a few meters away and stamped into the ground. But he wasn't going to give up and started counterattacking again. He tried to swing his sword at the principal again. However, it was all in vain. The principal was able to hold the sword with one hand. Instantly, with incredible strength, the principal squeezed the sword and broke it into many pieces. Xiao wanted to keep Bei safe and told him that the snakehead master not only had a divine body, but most likely had the skill of foresight. He can see both the past and the future. Suddenly, Bei grabbed the principal's head with his hands. He hit him from his knee right in the face, but the headmaster continued his speech and said that such blows were nothing to him. The snakes tied the hands and feet of the protagonist. The director wanted to finish the game he had started right now. He pulled his snakes, thereby ripping off Bei's leg and arm. Such a blow once again threw the protagonist back a few dozen meters. Eventually, Bei did manage to slow down and contemplated his next plan of action. With his energy, Ba began to form a new arm and leg. He was willing to do anything to destroy the director. He was going to use his speed to confuse the principal's gift of foresight. The director said no matter how hard the protagonist tries, he has no chance of winning. Call yourself a true lord. The director said he has no equal in this world. The guy wasn't going to stand for narcissism and started attacking the principal with his bare hands. He threw countless punches. The guy hoped that this could at least hurt the principal in some way. The director notices that the main character's speed and energy is increasing. This makes him a little wary. Eventually, he got tired of playing with Bae. He awakened even more power within himself. Being at the pinnacle of divine power, he wasn't going to fall for such foolish tricks. The light that studied the eye blinded the protagonist. He didn't realize what just happened. Xiao tried to say something to him, but the protagonist heard absolutely nothing. He immediately asked the principal what he had done to him. The one in turn only waved his hand. Bei found himself in some unfamiliar space. As a reward, the director decided to leave the protagonist in a desperate past. He leaves him without demonic powers. Lastly, the director told Bae to just watch him take revenge on those pathetic people. Xiao understood the main character's energy is trapped in the snake eye illusion. The level of the spell is too high. It can't be removed. Looks like this really is the end. It was at this time that Bei was walking down the dark corridor. He wondered if time was moving or standing still. He hoped time wasn't moving so he would have enough time to find a way out. Continuing to walk, he tried not to think bad thoughts. Suddenly, he saw a bright light in front of him. He immediately rushed towards it, as where there is light, there is a way out. As the guy got closer, he realized it was the car's headlights. He looked very carefully into the interior of the car and recognized who was there, sitting there. It was himself and his mother. The guy managed to bounce before he was almost hit by a car. He didn't understand where she had come from or what was even going on here. Suddenly, there was a man in front of the car who must have caused the accident. The man said no matter how strong Bae is now, he is stronger now, ended by calling the guy God Yerlan. At this point, it's not very clear to me who this man is and what he's doing in Bei's world. I can assume that this is the God Yerlan, who appeared before Bae to awaken his hidden powers so that he could get out of this void. The only thing this man does is throw Bei and his mother's car into the air. Bei wasn't shocked, he was just horrified by what he saw. It turned out that this guy is the reason why the main character couldn't remember the cause of the accident that happened 2 years ago. But when he saw this guy, he knew what was up. It was the guy who caused the accident, let Bei's mom die, and crippled him. The protagonist made a dash towards his opponent to kill him. The guy turned to him and said that the fact that BAE didn't die and traveled through space to be here was very interesting. While Bay was trying to strike, the guy explained that he couldn't strike because they were in different time dimensions. It's so beautiful to be able to see yourself get killed. BA felt an untransferable anger at not being able to do anything about it. The stranger added that it was all Yerlan's fault. He wanted an earthling like you to endure it. Since the stranger practically killed Bay once, he doesn't care if he kills him again. But right now, he's too weak to pique his interest. The guy would be interested in killing someone stronger than him. He'd get more satisfaction that way. BA tried to break the time barrier and stop the stranger. Bay was desperate. Unfortunately, he was powerless. With all his might, he shouted that that stranger was an asshole. Then we see a young BAE trying to help his injured mother. He apologized to her for allowing her to be in so much pain. At the end, his mother said that BEI should live on. As long as he lives on, he will surely find hope. After that, BAE cried. The car, along with his mother, exploded right in front of him. This whole picture was in front of the current Bay's eyes, and he promised his mother that he would live a strong man and never give up. Even if he had no purpose and no hope, he would still live. He dared not ask for anything else but life. The guy cried and realized that weakness was in the past, and now he has strength. He cannot be afraid to move forward. B looked at his blast-wounded body from the past, and it was at that moment that he found his new target. He realized that this was not an accident, but his destiny was predetermined by God Erlin. Bay's blood boiled with the hatred he felt. He was ready to kill all the demons in the world, but to find Erlin and take revenge. Suddenly, BEI disappeared, leaving behind an energy blast. At this time in the real world, the principal had his hand on Bay's forehead and felt his consciousness fluctuate. It looked like our high school student was struggling. Still, he tossed it aside as he had no time for a loser like BEI. A light shone in the director's eyes, and he said it was time to start the show. His eyes emitted a powerful laser stream that the principal used to cut the school building in half. The school children in the building could do nothing and were left to die. Mu Shui already realized that if the school was attacked, BEI couldn't stop the principal. She didn't know what to do, but she remembered her pendant. It was time to use it. This necklace had tremendous power. It contained some very powerful medicine, but there were also consequences after using it. After using it, at the very least, abilities would be lost, and at the worst, all the muscles and bones of the entire body would be broken. It could only be used at vital moments. She was willing to trade her life for the lives of all the students and teachers of the school. If it was her destiny, she would gladly accept it. She crushed the pendant with the cure. The girl was just about to drink the entire contents of the pendant. But suddenly there was an explosion near her. She didn't have time to finish it all. The girl lay on the ground and thought that since she had failed to realize her plan, it was also meant to be. There was another explosion, but further away. A huge amount of demonic aura gathered in the schoolyard. No one understood what was going on. An energy sphere was forming in the center of the demonic aura. The director didn't believe it was possible, but BAE broke his seal of time. Zhao immediately shouted that he had been waiting for Bay's return for a very long time. He ordered him to hand over the body immediately so that he could eat the director. But suddenly, Zhao was dragged by the chain. The chain was strung straight from the center of the energy sphere. Zhao tried to lean on something, but it was all in vain. Zhao had already thought that BEI was about to forcibly consume his soul. When the aura dissipates, we see BEI attracting Zhao. Zhao off-screen warns BEI that he can't control such a huge force without his involvement. Zhao begged BEI not to devour him. Eventually, Zhao was pulled into the sphere by BEI. The director at this time was angry with BAE as he wanted him to live in his most painful memories. Since BEI doesn't appreciate it, the principal decided to teach him a lesson. He sent a strong pulse of